What's up, you beauties? Welcome to our live NHL Trade Deadline show. I'm Jim, and I'm joined by the host of HW Full Circle, my esteemed co-host, Jack Smith. If you're not listening to us live, please make sure to subscribe, follow, and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Spreaker. Before we get to our show, let me give a quick shout out to our affiliate sites, fullpresscoverage.com and bellyupsports.com. Belly Up Sports recently updated their site. Go check it out during our episode. They have everything you need when it comes to sports. They do what others don't. And while you're listening to our episode, check out our site, hwhockey.net. Okay, Jack, let's get to it. A bunch of moves have already been made, and we'll no doubt get to some of the big ones at some point in the show. Jack, real quick before we get to our guest, which teams seem to have stood out to you the most to this point with their moves?
For me, that's got to be right off the bat, Toronto Maple Leafs. I know a lot of people think that their GM, Kyle Dubas, looks a little egg on his face, giving up a first-round pick for Nick Foligno, where Boston Bruins, which is another team on that list, did not have to give up a first-round pick. But the way this season has gone, I definitely like Nick Foligno more than I do Taylor Hall. I think the way he plays the game is exactly what Toronto needed. He's a veteran guy. He knows a couple of players up there. He was reluctant to leave Columbus, and the fact that he did is he really, I think his kid's got like some issues, medical issues, and the wife gave him the okay. She's like, I got this. Go chase that Stanley Cup. So it's a good story. He plays heavy. He's a talented player. He's got captaincy. He's got the natural captain tendencies about him. And there's just so much more to his intangibles than there is with Taylor Hall at all. Taylor Hall looks like a player that would have fit right within the Flyers this year. And I don't give a shit. I don't really care. And I can see why Buffalo didn't get a first round pick for him. So if I'm Toronto or Boston, I like what Toronto did so far. Even Rittich wasn't a bad pickup. I think that Calgary was looking to move on from him, but he did have some standout games. There's been a lot of coaching changes in Calgary. I think as a backup or even playing from time to time, he'll be okay. And I think Toronto has been impressed with him as I know he shut them out once and he had another, they lost in overtime, but he played really, really well. So they didn't really have to give up much. Frederik Andersen's probably going to be out for at least the rest of the season, maybe in the first playoffs. So to get some goaltenders in there was big. I heard Bernier is the big name out there, but you got to remember Reimer and Bernier used to play for Toronto. So maybe that had something to do with it. So right off the bat, for me, it's Toronto. Got to mention Boston. They did manage to bring in Taylor Hall and Curtis Lazar. It's not just Taylor Hall. They really didn't give up much. They added Mike Riley as well. They just got some depth. You would hope they would have did more on D, but they did get a big name. Tampa Bay, who really hasn't been in rumors, managed to get David Savard in that three-way deal as the rich gets richer. Colorado earlier in the week added Devin Dubnyk, Patrick Nemeth. I also forgot to mention that Toronto added Riley Nash, who's a teammate of Nick Foligno and a nice fourth line guy who come in most likely if there's an injury, but he's a good fourth line guy to have. Florida was good earlier on, clearing up cap space, adding Brandon Montour. We talked about the Islanders already. So pretty much everybody but the Flyers is what I'm getting at here. And that includes the Pittsburgh Penguins. Man, it really sucks to be a Flyers fan right now. We're going to have to see Jeff Carter in that stupid black and yellow gold or whatever the hell you want to call it. So I'm seeing a lot of teams that are out of it selling. I'm seeing a lot of teams that are in it buying. And I see our team sitting on their hands looking at the wall.
Yeah, not much has changed if you're a Flyers fan of the last at least for the last couple years there. Let's kind of spruce this show up a little bit here. We have a big guest for you guys. We'll get some New York Rangers perspective. As you can see below on the ticker there, we have a plethora of guests for the show. We'll get some Boston Bruins perspective later in the show. And we'll also be joined by our good friend Alex Appleyard in just a little bit. But for now, we have the one and only Kyle Hall.
How you guys doing?
Very good, Kyle, of the Broadway Hat Show. Thanks for hanging out with us, my friend. How are you feeling about what the Rangers have done up to this point, and are you expecting them to make any moves ahead of the 3 p.m. deadline?
Well, we've done nothing. We're just hanging out. I think everything I've heard from today, I don't think anything's going to happen. But, I mean, who knows? I mean, we have some time left here. I did see a lot of Rangers Twitter this morning upset about Taylor Hall. I heard you guys talking about it for a while. Not great for our fan bases, considering it's a team we're chasing. So would rather see him go to Toronto personally. But again, guy's got 2 goals in the year. I mean, he's been a shell of himself. This is what I'm telling myself all morning. Like, he's not going to be anything. So
it sounds like you're doing what Flyers fans are doing, man. We're trying to find ways to make ourselves feel better, but we're all out of those answers. I mean, if you look at the trajectory for the Flyers and the Rangers this year, I mean, they both kind of started out slow. The Flyers kind of went down, and the Rangers seem to be going up a little bit. They're fun to watch, man. I mean, unfortunately, we've gotten to see a lot of them the past couple of weeks. And they look like they're a lot of fun. Are you guys kind of seeing that the same way, or what's it like for you guys?
Yeah, I think the kids are starting to play better. And, right now we have this quote unquote kid line on the third line of Kakko, Philip Hedl, and Lafreniere. And the last couple games against the Islanders, they were probably, the most energized line. They played extremely well. I guess last night, they're starting to score more. Lafreniere's got a couple goals last couple games. Kakko, I wish he shoots the puck more, but you could see his natural progression is so much better than last year. Heedle's coming along as a solid center. The biggest question, I wrote an article on Belly Up last week about the Rangers trade prospect, and I wrote about Ryan Strome. He's a guy who, I mean, I don't know how he's viewed on the outside of Rangers town, but he's played extremely well at Panarin in the last 2 years. His numbers obviously are great. Because when you play with Artemi Panarin, they're going to be high numbers. But I think it kind of shows me and maybe other teams that, yeah, this guy can play with elite talent. I don't know what the Rangers plan to do with him long term. He's got 1 more year on a bridge deal that he signed this last offseason. And he was a guy who didn't sign until like September. And they were looking for deals at the draft for him. Nothing came up. Nothing came up during the summer. And it was kind of like, do they want him? Do they not want him? And he kind of signed a team-friendly contract. And now he's just under a point per game on the year this year. So it really comes down to what the heck are they going to do with? I don't know what they're going to do with him. So he was a guy I wrote about as a possible trade, because you look at who's on the market and there's no one close to his caliber as a center. So if you're going to sell him, today would be the day. If you're going to try to cash in on him, especially when you see what Palmieri and Zajac got a first-round pick and a prospect back. Like, you can get at least a first-rounder and a high-level prospect back for Ryan Strome without having to add a second contract or a second guy to the deal. So he's one guy who I thought might be moved, but, you're 4 points to have a playoff spot now. I don't think they're going to do anything. I think they're just going to ride it out.
So are you guys kind of
about that? About Ryan Strome? Have you heard any rumblings or anything about Strome being dangled with anybody being interested?
No. When I Google Ryan Strome on Twitter, it's just me. So maybe it's just my crazy brain thinking about it. I mean, when I bring it up, like, I talk to other Ranger fans about it, like after my show. We have like a little group chat of like Ranger fans that like, pump me up after my show, which is great every week. But, we talked about Ryan Strome last week, and I'm like, this is the time to sell, blah, blah. And I heard a lot of people say, like, you're 100% correct. Like, if you're going to sell, if we're going to trade him, they got to figure it out. Like last year, the trade deadline, Chris Kreider came up. He was going to be a UFA at the end of the year. They decided he got red hot last 2 weeks for the trade deadline. So the Ranger fans were like dying to keep him. Now, Ranger fans, first off, a guy who I've never seen Ranger fans so divided in the frame. Like, either you hate that guy or you love him. There's no like Ranger fans like, oh yeah, Kreider's all right. It's either like ship him to the moon or make him the captain. Like, it's no, like, that's it. So when last year they signed him to a long-term deal instead of trading him, at least it gave the fan base like, this guy's here to stay. He's part of our future. I think you got to do that with Strome, because if he continues on this year and then, in 56 games, he puts up, 50 points, and you get to the off season and it's like, okay, he's going to be a UFA. So he's going to get right out the rest of the year, or you get traded at the deadline, but you're going to trade him on no term at all to anyone. So it's going to be just a rental player for someone. I think now is the time to trade him. I guess you have time for the draft to trade him because it gives a team a year. I don't know. I just think that looking at like Vegas or someone who can need like, these teams that can need a second line center, I think it would have been a good time to get rid of him. And I like him. I think he's a good player. I'm not saying like, oh, get him out of here. He's awful. I think he's good. I'm just saying for the future of the team and looking at the young players we don't have the center depth. I would love to get a young center back if you could for him as a prospect. But
Nolan Patrick, you can have him.
He's available. Back too while we're at it.
So what I want to ask you about, I want to talk to you a little bit about your GM and then eventually your coach, because your GM, Jeff Gorton, had to make sure we don't call him Jeff Gordon, has done a sneaky good job putting that roster together. At least from the outside, it looks that way. I think you guys have a couple players as Flyers fans we're jealous of. I mean, obviously Panarin, he had the gift picks in I always get it wrong. Capo, Lafreniere, obviously. But then you have that sneaky move where he acquired Adam Fox. And that's a guy, at least for me, that I'm extremely jealous of, because as Flyers fans, we've had Provorov, Sanheim, Myers, all these young guys pumped down our throats for the last couple of years. You guys go out and make a trade, and it was a hell of a trade. You bring in Adam Fox, and he's a stud, instant stud. That's kind of like what we were hoping for from all of our guys. It's yet to happen. You guys get Adam Fox, and he's a rising star almost instantly. Can you talk to us a little bit about Jeff Gorton and the job he's done?
Yeah, I mean, I forget the date. I think it's February 23rd was when in 2018 they sent out a letter to all Ranger season ticket holders and fans saying this is the rebuild. We're going to lose players. They were a couple years from a cup. Just went to the cup run in 2015. So you still had Henrik Lundqvist, and then all of a sudden they're like, yeah, we're going to rebuild. And you look at that roster, like you were saying, the turnover we've seen. I mean, I think there's like 4 guys still there, if that. Like it's Kreider, Zibanejad, Buchnevich, and I'm trying to think who else is even there still.
Brendan Smith.
He might have been the AHL during that time. But by the way, he's a guy who I also think could get moved today. All joking aside, he's actually played pretty well this year on a third line, a third pairing, and he could play both left and right sides. So any playoff team looking for like a 7th defenseman as like a depth guy really can't go much wrong than him. He sticks up for his teammates. Everyone I've talked to that's played with him, like anyone I've had on the show, I bring him up because we've talked to a lot of AHL guys, and just kind of bring up because for whatever reason that 2018 team is like my niche. Like I just become friendly with a couple of those guys. So we talk about him coming down. They're like, he was like the nicest guy, bought dinner every night, like helping teammates out. So everything I've heard about him is a great guy. So I can see him being a possible guy. Because once you get that reputation of being a locker room guy, it gets around the league and everyone knows that. So he's a guy who I can see getting moved today, just because he is a UFA at the end of the year and the Rangers can get a 5th round pick for him. I think it's a no-brainer. But talking about the rebuild, yeah, the Adam Fox thing, that was a rumor forever for the Rangers. He's a Long Island kid. His parents are, I think, like, if you watch an NBC sports game, they say it like 17,000 times. Like, his parents are season ticket holders, blah, blah, blah. He grew up idolizing Brian Leetch, which isn't even true. But he kind of, I've seen people like Flyers fans and Capitals fans say that, he corrupted the system by what he did and as a college free agent, which I understand why people are mad. But, I mean, would you want to go to Calgary? I wouldn't. So, I mean, they got rid of him and they got Dougie Hamilton back from him. So, like, it wasn't like a nothing trade. Like, he was included in a big time trade. And then he got to Carolina. And, from what I've read about it and everything else, like, he was committed to go to Carolina. Like, he was, he wanted to finish his career because he was playing at Harvard. He wanted to get his Harvard degree. I mean, a lot of people can't even sniff Harvard. So why not stay there for 4 years? He's only 5'11". I think like 180 pounds. Like, he needed more time to develop as a player. So he wanted to stay all 4 years. And I guess Carolina wasn't too thrilled with that. So when it got to the end, like, he was still like on the fence about what he's going to do because he was finished his 4 years of college, and he was a 3rd round pick originally. So when he came out, he was a Hobart Baker runner up. So like, he had a lot of steam behind him. He had a lot of I think his agent was asking for the 925, the max that you can give to an entry level, and I think Carolina was kind of balking at that. And the Rangers were a team that I think made it known that they were interested in him, and he made it known that he wanted to go to New York, and it was just a second round pick away. And it's an unbelievable deal when you look at it now. But I've seen a lot of Flames fans, because I love doing the Fox for Norris tweet after every game, because he probably puts up 2 or 3 points a game. So, and I've had a couple of Flames fans he's a bum. I'm like, you guys dug out. What are you come on? He didn't ask to leave Calgary. They actually straight up traded him in a trade. Carolina, you could be a little mad. He didn't want to go to Carolina probably. He kind of worked his way to New York. But Calgary fans gotta relax about that.
He's not the only player to do that. I mean, Kevin Hayes did that.
Kevin Hayes did it.
Jimmy Vesey, they all wind up in New York somehow.
Yeah. They usually wind up in New York. Yeah, but I remember the Jimmy Vesey when he was with Buffalo, right? I think they got traded his rights to Buffalo, and they were like, "Oh, he's going to Buffalo. It's a done deal." And then the day before, they're like, "Yeah, he's not going to Buffalo. He's probably gonna go to New York." And then there was that Jimmy Vesey sweepstakes for a week, and it's oh my god. And then, which I think really hurt him, because he wasn't going to be a first line player that they all said he was going to be coming out of college. But you've seen his career since he left the Rangers. I think the Rangers actually, again, Jeff Gordon, great decision, got rid of him at the right time. And he struggled when he actually did go to Buffalo, and then he's since has been released one more time since in Toronto. So, I mean, looking at the deals he's made little deals like Colin Blackwell this year. He's a guy who was basically he's $700,000 UFA pickup. He's got 12 goals in a year. He kills penalties. He's playing on the second power play, although I'm not a big fan of that, even though he's producing. He's the guy who you don't want him to produce because you want to see kids play higher in the lineup, but it's he's got 12 goals in the year. He's fifth on the team in scoring, and he plays balls to the wall every game. So you can't be mad at the guy. Last night, who was it? Scott Mayfield, who's 6'4", and by the way, Blackwell's 5'9". So they Mayfield's this giant hulky defenseman who does nothing for the Islanders except hit people after the whistle, and he slashes Blackwell, and Blackwell turns around, and you just see the height difference, and I'm and Blackwell's literally laughing in his face, and then like a madman, he's laughing, and then all of a sudden Mayfield turns around, and then he's two arms of him. I'm like, oh my god, and he turns back around, he's just laughing like a madman. I'm like, this guy's crazy. But I like him. He's a great guy to have on the team.
We need more guys like that over here.
Yeah. It's Konechny. He's 5 foot, nothing, but he's goes in front of the net. He'll scrap after the play a little bit. I don't think he's gonna drop the gloves with someone, but at least he'll annoy someone for a little bit.
Neither of them score. No, I'm just
the only crazy people we got are the ones running the show.
Yeah. So what's going on there in Flyersville? Because I've seen a lot of angry, for whatever reason, I got a lot of Flyers people that I follow and that follow me, and you guys are an angry bunch.
Well, I mean, we're angry when we're winning, so this is just hell on earth.
What's it look like from the outside perspective? What do you think of this Flyer season? I'm sure you've paid attention. We're in the same division. We had high hopes, high expectations. Obviously, we lost Niskanen over the summer. Lost a guy like Tyler Pitlick, but you look at the roster and it's well, maybe these guys shouldn't be that big of a loss. What's it look like from the outside perspective?
Well, you got AV, which Ranger fans are, I personally liked. The guy took us to a cup. So, you can't hate the guy, but he was awful for development. He played. He ruined JT Miller. You look at JT Miller since he's left, the guy's taken off. For whatever reason, he just couldn't play. The crazy thing is Hayes, I thought he was a guy who got really restricted under AV, and then he signed there with him, which I thought was the biggest, the weirdest thing to see, because I thought he was one of the guys who was the most restricted under him. But he was just terrible development talent. He just didn't play the kids. If you played it, this is my biggest pet peeve with the Rangers, and they still do it now. Kravtsov the other night playing the fourth line. When you bring a kid up and he's a skilled player and you put him on the fourth line, what are they going to accomplish with no offense to Kevin Rooney, but Kevin Rooney isn't a Ryan Strome that's going to set you up for a goal. So why are you playing a player on the fourth line? And AV did that with every young player. every young player, Elias Anderson, like every young guy came up fourth line. And it's like, what are you doing? Like, why are we continuing to do it? And it's Rangers franchise has done that. So I don't know if he's doing that in Philly. I'm sure he probably is. But I mean, look at their Flyers. One, I enjoy playing the Flyers this season. So
I bet.
He gets advantage at for whatever reason.
You and about 7 other teams, 6 other teams enjoy it.
Yeah, Buffalo.
Mika really turns it around when he sees the orange on the ice. And then, I mean, it's just like, I watched some of the game yesterday because it was on at 2:00, and obviously I'm rooting against the Flyers yesterday. After I rooted for you guys during the week to beat Boston, which you did a good job. I had to win there. But so I'm watching the game yesterday, and I'm like, this team just beat Boston. And now, for whatever reason, similar to the Rangers, they struggle against Buffalo. I don't know why. Buffalo's been playing really tough lately. Like, for whatever, they changed it with Granato as the coach, and they've been playing a lot better. But I'm like, I don't know. I'm looking at the Flyers defense. It's awful. Like, terrible. Like, Buffalo. Yeah, I know. I look from the outside. You're asking for an outside perspective. I'm telling you.
No, I know. It's so bad, dude. Like, it was supposed to be one of the strengths of this team, build a team the right way from the net out. You got Carter Hart. You got your 3 supposed studs on defense. But the GM just didn't go out and get anybody for them. He kind of said, here's Eric Gustafson. Here's Shane Gostisbehere, who was very good 3 years ago, playing better of late. So God forbid I say anything bad there. And Justin Braun's playing on the top pair. It's like, dude, what did you expect?
Yeah. And I look at Boston too. Like, again, in my head, I gotta rationalize this kind of stuff. Boston's defense is trash as well. Like, they got 2 AHL goalies, and their defense are like, McAvoy's out now. So you look at the defense, and it's like nothing. So for a Ranger and a Flyers fan, I'm like, there's a shot here to catch up. But then I watch the Flyers, and I'm like, what?
There's no hope.
I don't know. And then I watch the Rangers, and like they can go from like a game 8, was 8-4 against Pittsburgh the other night to then losing 5-2. And the Rangers issue is more of like an energy issue. Like, sometimes they come on the first period, like last night, and be completely flat. Like, I don't know what their deal is coming out of the locker room. Like, they're as flat as can be. And all of a sudden, the second period, they're like, oh shit, we got to start playing now. And they start turning it around. And then, they can't win a close game either. I think they have 8 losses in regulation by 1 goal.
Wow.
So, I mean, you even get half those games to overtime. That's 4 points. You're tied. You're tied for a playoff spot. They've lost, I think, 6. They're 3-6 in overtime. So even you win 2 of those games, it just kills me. And that's just a young team. That's what it is. They're young players. They'll grow more. But when you look at, I mean, it's a lot of points you're leaving on the table there. Like 3-6 in OT and 8 one-goal games. And like, I think they have like 1 win with a 1-goal game. I mean, there's a lot of games they scored empty netter, like obviously to make it 2, but just looking at the close games, like, holy shit, like we can't. And every third period, I just wait for our last, like, a 1 minute. Like last night, I'm just like sitting on the edge of the couch with a minute left. The Islanders having the zone. I'm like, they're gonna score here. Like, I know they're gonna score here. Like, I just knew it. And then like, obviously, Eeyore had to make an unbelievable save to get it to overtime, and then the Rangers can't play 3-3. I don't know what they can't.
I don't know if you happened to catch the end of the Flyers game yesterday, but I don't think we expected anything less than what happened. I think they were
the theme,
right, Jack.
That is the theme of the season. Like, listen, at the beginning of the season, when the Flyers had a good record, we saw the cracks. There were cracks where we're looking at, like, they're getting outshot. The differential was almost 100 or over 100. Or like, this is not sustainable. This is going to fall apart. We just didn't know it was going to fall apart this badly. There was a couple of blowouts, like a 6-1 loss to Ralph Kruger's Buffalo Sabres. Yeah, and we were like, that can't happen. Like, you'd have thought this defense lost Ray Bourque, not Matt Niskanen. Like, it's unbelievable. Or we're the team that lost Pietrangelo. Like, it's unbelievable how bad they are. Everybody's regressed across the board. And maybe you're onto something with AV and the young guys, because we're seeing it in guys like Sanheim and Myers. Ghost really didn't play last year. And yeah, he's playing better recently just on offense, not on his defense has never improved. It's never gotten any better. People still walk right by him. And I'm a little worried about Carter Hart too. It's the one player AV will continuously shit on in every interview is Carter Hart.
Oh, here's some breaking news for Ranger fans.
Uh-oh.
Zach Jones, who just won the national championship at UMass, he was the all all NCAA player in the tournament. He had an unbelievable tournament. He's a very good defensive prospect. He was thought to, from what I've heard from many inside people, was going to return to UMass, and the Rangers are expected to sign him to a entry-level deal today, and he'll report directly to the Rangers, not the AHL.
How about that?
Wow.
So that is a breaking story. Literally just got the text.
Wow. I don't know. Rangers.
That's going to be big for you guys.
They're adding, yeah.
That'll be interesting. So maybe that does free up a Brendan Smith to be traded, because you got to play the kid if you got to sign him.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, well,
Now we got some dominoes falling here, boys. Here we go. We're going
the last hour and a half of the stretch. Today's been kind of quiet. I mean, there's been a bunch of little moves.
Yeah.
You could see down there in the ticker the Golden Knights just acquired Matthias Janmark.
Yeah, I just saw that. There goes the Ryan Strome to Vegas. That I thought.
Yep. Nothing really too big today. I think the bigger moves were made last night, just in case the people watching, the listeners or the viewers haven't seen Jeff Carter, former Flyer fan favorite, traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's now with Ron Hextall. And the Boston Bruins acquired Taylor Hall, I think we mentioned earlier in the show. Yeah, big names went last night. There's still some moves I think that could be made today. No big defensemen have moved yet. Ekholm was rumored to be moved a couple weeks back. That's kind of quieted down a little bit. Josh Manson still available in Anaheim. Rumored to be seeking a first-round pick and a high prospect, or 2 first-round picks. What do you think of that trade price there? Yeah, that's a lot?
It's way too much.
So going back to Pittsburgh, your boy heading to Pittsburgh now. He's a guy who, I mean, he's a gamer, that guy, and I hate seeing him go to Pittsburgh. I mean,
show's named after him.
Yeah,
why?
So, and what do you think of Hextall being in Philly now? I mean,
Pittsburgh, I hate it. I dislike Ron Hextall more and more every day. I know Jack kind of I have a lot of I don't have the same opinion about Ron Hextall as a lot of Flyer fans, and me and Jack kind of go back and forth about that sometimes. So maybe I'll let Jack go ahead and take that away.
Well, a lot of people who just don't like him are like, oh, where's our superstar prospects? And it's not wrong, but again, he didn't draft 1, 2, 3 outside of Nolan Patrick, which was kind of gifted. But he does know how to draft and develop talent, and he's still got Pryor with him. And the only thing with Pittsburgh is I don't know where he's going to get these picks from. Like, they don't have anything, and they're still trading picks. They traded 2 more. So I don't know how he's going to turn them around outside of signing some guys, maybe, because his adding at the NHL level has been pretty rough. That Dale Weiss contract was a joke. JVR we kind of like the guy, but really he's not winning anything. And Winger's making over $7 million. Got to be more productive than that. So I don't know. I liked him for the rebuilding aspect, but you can't completely shut it off at the NHL level. And that's where a lot of the hate was. And now that all the prospects have come up and we're not winning, everybody's, hating on that. What did he really do? And it's like, all right, well, he didn't have, no offense, but no Lafreniere or Jack Hughes, or we never got that pick. We never had that guy. And then people point to Nolan Patrick.
What was Nolan Patrick?
Was he Nolan Patrick? So we look at that draft, and first off, he was drafting like 13th. He had no business being in that position. They move up, and he takes the guy who is literally slotted to be there, which, to be honest, I've never heard of a guy going that high. The GM going against the what do they call it? The projections, essentially. I've never seen that happen. Like, it's like if Edmonton took Jack Eichel instead of McDavid or something. Like, that doesn't happen. So what sucks is now everybody around them have all become superstars except for Patrick. And it's like, so whose fault is this? Patrick and the headaches, or Hextall? So I don't know, because any other draft he's drafted in, if you draft him at the top of the draft, he's getting a stud. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But the one time we get Nolan Patrick, who the jury's going to be out on for the next 5 years. So other than that, I don't know. I've never seen a GM rebuild on the fly without getting multiple top picks. You look at Pittsburgh, they had like 5 first overall picks. Unless you get a generational player.
Yeah, they went 3 in a row, right?
Yeah. Well, one of them was the number 2 overall pick. So they had
Fleury, Malkin, and
Jordan Stahl was a first overall pick, I believe, too, or very close to the top. I know Malkin was 2, but if they had one, it would
obviously Crosby.
Yeah, Crosby. They had tons of them, and then you could throw the Oilers thing at me, but they
Wow.
again, like
They don't do anything with it anyway.
Yeah. So I think a lot of the teams that rebuild through the draft, you have to have the stud prospect at the top. And at least one guy to build your franchise around. And you're not getting those guys in the mid rounds unless you get Pasternak, who are people act like they grow on trees. They don't. Like it's a rare one. It doesn't happen. If Carter Hart was the second round pick, like it's not looking good right now, but imagine how this fan base felt about him last year. They absolutely loved him. Provorov was a good pick. People say that was the easy pick. It's like, okay, so which is it? Now it's the easy pick. Now it's the right pick.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Zaka went before Provorov. I mean, he's okay at best. I still much rather have Provorov. How about Dylan's? What's his name? Yeah, is it Dylan Strome? He was a Phoenix pick.
Yeah, Dylan Strome. Yeah,
he's not bad, but come on, third overall. Mitch Marner went after him. I mean, you have to make the right picks at the right time. And I feel like he never had a bottom dwelling team who accumulated a shitload of picks and drafted continuously at the top of the draft, like Toronto did for a little bit. Like Buffalo did for a little bit. They may not have been able to put it together, but Jack Eichel's one hell of a player. If he had that and done that, I think we're looking at a different team. But he had a lot of really bad contracts that this team was stuck with, and he did manage to get rid of them. It was going to be a slow build. He just neglected the NHL level for too long, and he just didn't hit big enough on some of the later guys, or some of the guys he did draft, like Sanheim right now. He's looking a little rough. Rupstov was a miss. Patrick, I can't see any other GM not taking Patrick at 2. Honestly, you go back to that draft, he was the number 1 consensus pick. It was either going to be him or outside chance it was Heischer. Devils take Heischer. Every GM is taking Patrick there. They are. I mean, that's how it always is. And whether it's a hit or miss or not, that's what happens.
He's a big time center. I thought he was going to be great. I was pissed. I was pissed when I was like, oh man, this guy, we got to deal with him next. So as a Flyers fans looking in at the Rangers now, are you scared of the Rangers for the next 5 years?
100%. I do a separate show called Full Circle where I do the Metro teams, and I liked the Rangers before you got Lafreniere. I liked where it was going. I liked where the team was building, and the fact that you just added him was, and we talked about it before that draft happened. It was like I wanted to blow my brains out. And even with D'Angelo, that whole fiasco, I know about Krastov, and I did want to ask you before we got off. You traded Brendan Lemieux for a 4th to LA to bring in Krastov, but Lemieux's a young guy. Was there other issues with him, or was it really just about getting Krastov up here?
Yeah, he actually requested a trade.
He requested, okay.
Yeah, he requested a trade, which was not known to anyone. Never got in the media, but his agent shared it afterwards. Because I went on Twitter, I was like, awful trade. I hate it. He's the one guy who will drop the gloves, like the one guy that he's like 5'10", but like still like, what's the goon on your team? Moron. What's his name?
Another first round.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as a goon anymore.
Yeah. That idiot. He fights him. He's like 6'6", like a tree, and he stands up and he fights him. And not for anything, Moran throws a cheap shot at him anyway during the fight, but I'm not going to say that.
Well, I didn't see the cheap shot. Where was it?
The first punch was a cheap shot.
Oh, the one
he hit him before he even got the gloves off.
I don't know. It looked like he let him set up a little bit there. I thought the cheap shot was the hair pull.
The hair pull too. They had the ice bounce.
I did. Yeah. I noticed the hair.
Looked like Don Zimmer getting bounced that Fenway. I mean, come on. But I was disappointed that he got traded. But then it came out that he wanted to go. He saw himself as a third line player, which, I mean, when you look at the Rangers' talent on the top 9, like he's not breaking the top 9. He's going to be on a 4th line. Grinding. He wasn't getting, he got, which was funny because he started to get like sparingly power play minutes. And I was like, what the hell is he doing on the power play? That must have been something to keep him happy for like a quick minute. But then they dropped him off and they put Blackwell on the power play. And then sure enough, he got shipped out. I thought they would have gotten more than a 4th round pick for him. I mean, he's like 25, I think, but he's a great guy to have on your team. I think LA fans are going to really enjoy him. I don't know what kind of role he's going to play out there. I don't know if he's going to get third line minutes. I haven't really followed to see if he's playing or not at all. But, I was following the Kings earlier this year because they had Elias Anderson. He's a guy who I thought the Rangers did dirty. And again, I've talked to a lot of AHL players that play with him, and they said that he is like unbelievably talented and just like a freak athlete. So I always wanted to see like how he's going to turn out, because obviously talking about bad draft picks, that has to be up there for the Rangers. 7th overall. That was a bad pick, I guess, when you look at it. But so that's why I was following them. The same draft was Philip Hedl, and Hedl's obviously taken off and done probably what they wanted Anderson to do, and step into the lineup. But I don't know. It's just like you were saying with the draft picks, you don't know, and it's a lottery ticket. So you get a 4th round pick, like, yeah, he can turn into something. But I just thought Lemieux brings a great value to a team, and he's a guy who you have him on your team, you love him, you play against him. Like, I don't know if Flyer fans hate him. I know Islander fans don't like him.
We like him.
Yeah. So, he's got his father's nickname, Pepe. So, I mean, you got to love that. But
because he stinks.
Yeah, because he stinks. Yeah. That's
Just
it.
kidding, dude.
Because he stinks. But I wish he had his dad's size. I mean, he plays like his father. He's nasty like his father.
Yeah.
Maybe not the playoff heroics as his dad yet, but, maybe he'll get there.
Oh, you got to get there first.
Exactly.
So, Kyle, that's going to do it for the end of our Rangers segment here. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. Why don't you tell our listeners and viewers where they can find your work and your show, man?
Yeah, sure. So you can follow me on Twitter at KHallNY, and then you can follow the show, the Broadway Hat Podcast, at Broadway Hat Pod on Twitter, and then we're available on all streaming services: Apple, Google, Amazon, Spotify, you name it, we're on it. So come check us out. We have a really cool show this week. So because of the trade deadline, again, talking to, pooling my Ranger resources and talking to people, it seems like, funny enough, because of Zach Jones, everyone was so hot for him last week. They wanted to get a prospect show going. So I sat down with a Rangers prospect this week, Eric Ciccolini, who is playing for Michigan. He was a 7th round pick, but is like slowly really going up the rankings. He had a really good year this year. And we have Steven Vogel, known as Statboy Steven on Twitter. He's like the Rangers' unofficial European scout. Like, this guy knows everything. So he's really tight with Niels Lundqvist, who is probably the next big defensive prospect coming to the NHL next year. So you guys will love him. He's going to be great. He's like, they call him the Swedish Adam Fox. So
oh my God, are you kidding me? Another one.
You
don't need any more Adam Foxes up in New York.
He's same size, like 5'11", same everything, same game, same offensive skill, like great defensively. And then he's got a shot that they compare to Ovechkin.
I hope he stinks.
Never heard of any of those guys.
Love him. Love it. So check it out this week.
All right, we're going to let you drop off, Kyle. Once again, thanks for hanging out. Make sure everybody listening and watching, make sure you go check out Kyle, give him a follow, and listen to his podcast. Thanks for having me, guys. Good luck today. Hopefully you guys get someone, maybe a Mark Stahl or something. Get out of here, man. That's AV's boy. Man. You better watch out.
Oh, my God.
Take care, Kyle.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle.
All right, everyone. Kyle Hall of the Broadway Hat. We have another guest lined up. She is on the line now. We're going to bring her into the stream.
What's
Ms.
up,
Shannon
guys?
Walsh. What's up, Shannon? How's it going?
I'm doing great. I'm having a lovely day.
Yeah, I bet. After a big night last night, huh?
Your deck in the hall.
Yeah, Twitter was not the first app I checked this morning, which was a mistake. And so I didn't know for the first half hour that when I was awake that we got Taylor Hall. And then just saw someone say congrats, Shannon, and I was like, for what?
Well, let me ask you a question here, because as Flyers fans, unless you want to count James Van Riemsdyk or Kevin Hayes, which I don't think we so much do anymore, what's it feel like to get, a premier NHL talent on your team, to trade for one, to sign one? Because we don't know anymore. We don't know what that feeling is like.
Kevin Hayes was a good land, but I guess it's a few years old now. The thing is that NHL Bruins, Twitter, their fan base is so split on pretty much every semi-controversial issue. So there are a lot of people that aren't even happy that we got him. They think it was a mistake, even though we absolutely fleeced Buffalo for him.
A second-round pick for a Hart Trophy winner? Come on.
And they retain half his contract.
That was
I could be upset with that.
And he already said in his press conference that he was more than likely going to re-sign. And everyone was concerned that it was going to be a rental, blah, blah, blah. As if York hasn't even done a lot this year, so it wasn't a huge loss.
Right. Wow. See? So what do you give your chances now? I know there's some issues on defense. I know you added Mike Riley, but I mean, you definitely fleeced them. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
well.
I don't think Sweeney's done yet today. I think that he'll probably make a couple more moves. I'm hoping they're on defense though, and they're not on offense. I mean, we can just keep tinkering with the third and fourth lines, but that's not the primary issue. You know, our starting defensive lineup was 2 out of our 6 top defensemen last night, which is why we got absolutely crushed by the Capitals. We usually play really well against the Capitals. And there were guys that I was like, I have never heard of this man in my life, like on our blue line last night. So, I mean, it's obviously not a long-term issue because it's a huge injury problem, but even then there's still only 15 or so games left. Like you gotta win those so that either the Flyers or the Rangers don't sneak up and take that 4th slot. We're definitely not going up a slot anymore. We're 10 points back from the Penguins, but
well, I don't think you have to worry about us catching you. Maybe the Rangers, but those no names you mentioned, they tend to get their first NHL goals or wins against the Flyers. It's just we drink.
Flyers beat us on Saturday.
Well, yay!
I think we were all surprised.
It's amazing to me. It's like the Phillies. Like they always make this pitcher from the minors look like, you know, Roy Halladay.
Amazing.
And it's like the same. It's like a Philly thing now. And we've seen first NHL goal against us so many times. It's unbelievable. Now
It's like
goalies
a
get
thing
win.
now.
And he was like the 4th string goalie, I believe too. It is embarrassing. And then you guys get even better. And I agree with you. You're probably not done. And I'm serious. First off, we're doing nothing today. Nothing at all. I've heard.
I thought you'd at least do something, like either try to make a run or sell something. You know, I think there are some players that you could probably part with.
Oh, there are.
Their value's gone. But
Well, this is why we had to have fun
Fletcher.
guests on, fans of fun teams, because the
I
Flyers
think they feel bad for us, and they're just like, "No, it's okay. Like he'll do something." And we're like, "Oh, I don't know."
I don't know. I'm like a big proponent that there are some of your older offensive guys that do have, you know, talent still, but it's just a chemistry issue at this point. Like you're not going to get that chemistry that you had prior in Philadelphia, and so it's the same issue that I was arguing with PK Subban. Like sell him before he has no value anymore. And I think there are a couple guys on the Flyers that they could do that with, or they could just stand pat.
Fletcher's done a whole lot of nothing this year, and I see that trend continuing. Like Lawton should be moved. Raffle could be moved. He's a depth piece that could literally play anywhere throughout the lineup. People have mentioned Braun, but I know certain teams don't like that he had. You know, you might not want that second year of the deal, even though it's kind of cheap. It's just a flat cap error. That's really it. Maybe Elliott. I don't think so, but
he's pretty old, isn't he?
He is, but he's well, you know, he looks older than he actually is.
That's true.
He
looks really old.
Yeah, he looks like he's pushing 40, but I think he's like what, 34, 35 or something.
See, Halak is pushing 40. So
and any of these guys can be moved. And I see all these other GMs getting cute and creative and making things happen, and we haven't heard a peep out of Fletcher. The most I've heard is they might acquire Mark Stahl. I'm like, why? Why? How is that going to push us past the Bruins or even keep the Rangers from passing us? It's not, and it's a joke. And we're all really worried here in Philly because we don't trust the guys at the top. Our division. Luckily, you'll go back to your other division after this year, and we can just deal with our problems. But let's say you don't make any more moves. What do you think the outlook for the Bruins is for the rest of the year?
So it's going to depend on who gets the top seed. The Bruins are not in control of their situation, which sucks, unless they absolutely shit the bed and the Rangers move up. But it depends on who takes the top spot, because if the Islanders take the top spot and we're up against the Islanders in the first round, we're absolutely screwed. We're not getting past the Islanders. But we do, like I said, play really well against the Capitals. And I think that as long as we can get some of the blue line players back from injury, we should be fine. The other thing that's really a big question mark is Rask is going to come back from injury anytime now. And I am not – one of the things that the Bruins fan base is very split on would be Rask and his long-term tenure with the Bruins. His mental focus is horrendous. Coming back from a long injury and then having, you know, let's say he's out like 2 more games, probably like 12 games left that he's got to play, and he's probably going to play like 8 or 9 of them. He's probably going to drop 2 or 3 that are winnable games because he's not focused all the time. And I have seen these 2 young goalies do really well, and I'm like, I mean, we have too many goalies, which is not an issue that Philadelphia has. But, you know, like I am worried for him to come back, which is not a popular issue in Bruins land. But
Seems that Rask and Boston fans have always been at odds. And
he's always been a point since we lost in 2013. He's been a point of contention because there were a lot of games there that we could have won if the focus was there. And then obviously last year in the bubble when he left, that was a family issue, so that's entirely different. But it was really controversial for a lot of fans that were like, you left your team high and dry. And there was really no winning in that situation. Like people found out that he left his kid at home sick to stay in the bubble, they would have been like, you're a horrible person. When he left the bubble, he got you left your team down. So, I mean, there was no winning there, and he never really does win. Like, people say he's an incredible goalie, and then he drops bad games, and then they say, get rid of him. So
it's funny that you said that you hope that you play Washington and you have no chance against the Islanders. That's exactly how, when the Flyers were a good team, we used to view the rest of our division. Same thing. We'd rather take the Capitals all day, just keep us away from the Islanders. Can't believe we went to Game 7. But, yeah, that minus the fact that, Hart was pretty good last year. But before that, goaltending was – that's why when we hear about Rask in Boston, we're like, hey, you guys, you don't know.
And the thing is, Rask is – we're not going to – we might. I don't think we should re-sign him. He's on a contract here. There's retirement rumors left and right. And I'm like, if you want to make another big move, you shop him. You've already got 3 other goaltenders that can get you through the rest of the season, but they won't do it because it's such a contentious issue within the organization. And Don Sweeney has already made one big move, which is probably the largest thing he's ever done in his tenure. He's very much a skittish GM. So I can't imagine he's going to make another large move. I'm just hoping he does something for the blue line.
So if you're out on Rask, let's say the organization's out on Rask, even going forward, is there any kind of prospect you have waiting in the wings, or are you?
Yeah. So Halak has had COVID for the last week, and Rask has been out injured for a good month or so. So we have Dan Vladar came up from Providence before Rask tested positive, and he played fine. It wasn't his first. I don't think this is his first year, but it's definitely his first longer tenure in Boston. And then Swayman came up from Providence, and he was the Hobie Baker winner from UMaine last year. And he has played – you guys were his first loss on Saturday. And it wasn't his fault. It was surely the defense's fault. He, in his first 2 games, stopped 71 of 75 shots, and he looked incredible. So, I mean, they sent him down to the taxi squad to make more contract space. But, I mean, and part of it – I'm worried about that it would be a Carter Hart situation, right? You'd rush him into starting full time, and I think he's 21. But I don't know. There's definitely other options there because Vladar is looking fine too.
All right, so you do have some kind of plan moving forward.
Right.
We asked this with our last guest from the Rangers, and since you're in our division this year, what is the perspective of your fan base on the Flyers' woes? Because I personally feel like we're an ongoing joke right now. What is the Bruins fans' perspective of the Flyers' issues?
So it's interesting. I am dating a Flyers fan, so I have a very unique perspective of the Flyers. I can't shit on them as much as I would like to.
Yeah, good taste.
So, I mean, I don't think I tweeted last night, and I was like, the Bruins just lost 8-1 to a team they usually beat, because they were missing defense, and they looked horrendous. I don't think that we are in any state to say that we're significantly above the Flyers when we're giving up games like that. And we give up games. We've lost 3 of the 4 games against the Devils this year because we play down. There are so many winnable games that we've given up. And so from my perspective, I think that the Flyers are not that bad because we're giving up games left and right as well. We just have more games in hand, so it doesn't look as bad. But I know that other Bruins fans think that, you guys are a joke because we typically beat you except for Saturday. So, I mean, I don't know. I think once we played it's not the Winter Classic, the outdoor game. Game. Yeah. I think once we had that and it was the bad loss for you guys, that really set the tone for the Bruins fan base.
I mean, that was funny because that was the one game we had so many guys out with COVID where I was willing to give them a pass, but they never recovered from that. Losing these kind of 8-1, 9-0 games is commonplace for our team now. It's really embarrassing. It's a core issue, if you ask me. I truly believe that it's guys like Voracek, and they're just, once they go down in games, they can't stop the bleeding. They can't turn things around.
Yeah.
You guys lost. I know he was getting older, But Chara was your captain, and he was with you for so long. You won a Stanley Cup.
It's another point of contention within the Boston fan base.
I'm going to ask you, all we did was lose Matt Niskanen, who was only with the team for 1 year. You'd have thought we'd have lost Ray Bourque or Petragano. But you guys lost, yeah, I know. You guys lost Chara. He was getting older, but did you guys want him back? Why? He didn't.
I wanted him back. So that was another one that teams were like, no, he's older. It's not that bad. We've got that core. But we lost Torrey Krug, too, which was a significant understatement in terms of the offseason. A lot of people forgot about that because they saw Chara leave and they were like, what the hell? It was like retirement or resign. Leaving wasn't one of the options there. And the frustrating thing is he got the same amount of money that we offered him, but he's getting more minutes with the Capitals. And we did an interview on my show with Dale Arnold, who's the host of the Bruins on New England Sports Network. And he was saying that I think a lot of it was a pride thing for Chara. You're the captain of the team and you're going to get healthy scratched and only play for, PK and power play minutes. It's probably not going to sit well with him. And originally that is what the Capitals offered him. And they said, you can do that. And it's not the team that you're a captain of and the fan base that's going to be, judging you till the bitter end because you're getting healthy scratched. But now he's playing 20 minutes a game in Washington because he looks good. And that entire team, for whatever reason, is able to take old players and make them look fantastic. I can't understand how they're not slowing down. They're freaking old.
You can't teach size, man. I mean, he'd be playing 40 minutes a night in Philly right now. I'd be on a top line with Provorov, no doubt. Because if Justin Braun can do it, Chara can do it. And that's why
and that's the other thing about so they gave up Chara, and obviously he looks great, and it looks like a blunder, except there are some fans that are like, no, he wouldn't have fit with what the Bruins are doing right now. This was an opportunity for McAvoy, who's hurt, to come up. Carlo, who's hurt, to come up. But then you look at them losing Torrey Krug also. And Krug averages, we were looking at it during our live stream last week, 40 or 45 assists a season. And he has 6 or 7 this year and 1 goal because St. Louis is using him so incorrectly. They have him on penalty kill and not power play, things like that. And he's playing on weird pairings, all these things. And I'm like, this was a huge mistake. Why could you have not just paid him, understanding that your depth on the blue line was not that great and you were already at risk of losing Chara? So, and it's really frustrating because he was one of those real core guys that kind of was understated in terms of the Bruins, personality and the locker room dynamics and things like that. His freaking dog is named after Fenway.
Honestly, the loss of Cruz is why I thought for sure Chara would be back and given the minutes. And with the injuries and with the COVID and the close games, I just didn't think that ice time would matter too much because they'd be giving guys breaks just for the fact that they were playing so many games and so many nights. It was very surprising, but you're still in much better shape than we are.
I think they really underestimated how much they were going to need depth because at the beginning of the season, when we were previewing, I was like, we lose 1 defenseman, we're screwed. We're going to lose every game. And now we're out 4 and we are losing games, but it's it would have been incredible for you to keep Chara. You went out of your way to sign Kevin Miller, who's made of glass. He doesn't, he got great for him for, coming back from that injury, re-signing, blah, 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 but he's still hurt over and over. Why did you waste a blue line spot on that? It doesn't make sense to me. But again, Don Sweeney is not my favorite GM. So
answered one of my questions there.
on Kevin
Is there a certain move that you didn't
Sweeney.
like that he did? What do you like and dislike about Sweeney?
His first year with the Bruins, we had a 13th, 14th, and 15th pick in the first round of the draft. And he let Matt Barzal go, and he picked Zach Senchen, who just this year started playing games because so many people were hurt. And it boggles me that he picked Zaboral, I think,
Yep.
DeBrusque, and Senchen. And I was like, what? Why? Even the analyst, I vividly remember it because the analysts were like, he wasn't even projected in the first round. That was such a blunt. I'm shocked he kept his job after that. And then afterward, the Bruins are just so interested in doing short rental trades. This is the first one that granted his contract up, so it's not a guarantee that Hall will re-sign. But Charlie Coyle's trade, Donato's trade, they're all short-term rental trades, and they're not anything to get you past, the playoff run, which is really frustrating, which is why we lose guys in free agency because they don't have a long-term plan.
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up that 2015 draft because I've referenced that so many times. We got connecting pro overall by that draft, and I remember Boston having those 3 picks. That one guy you mentioned, he was like a second. I think he was projected to go at the end of the second round.
Yeah.
Zaboral and DeBrusk were late first round projections. You could have drafted, and I'm not saying we're good by any means, but you could have literally had like Barzell, Konechny. And there's like I think the guy from Winnipeg was in that draft as well. Like they could have really killed it. But I originally thought they traded all those because Lucic was how they got at least one of those picks, trading him away. I thought they were trying to trade up for actually Hannafin.
I think the other one's from Boychuk too. Like they got rid of like core guys to get those picks, and then they absolutely blundered the draft. Like,
yeah, it's good that some of those guys, they're on the NHL roster, but I thought they were going to kill it or move up and into the upper echelon and get I thought they had their eye on Hannafin. Not that he's crazy good right now, but I truly thought that was going to be the case. But other than that, I can't think of any big Sweeney moves, but you did say he was a skittish GM. I guess, do you really think if he adds defense, it'll be more of a depth piece and there won't be any Ekholm or anything of that nature? I
mean, from what I've read, in the last couple hours on Twitter, teams are calling about Frederick and DeBrusk. I have no problem with them moving DeBrusk. I didn't have a problem with them moving Krejci, but now I see it as very unlikely that they move Krejci because they're going to pair Hall and Krejci together. I don't want them, unless they're moving like lower tier guys on the blue line to replace them. I don't think they should do that. But DeBrusk is an easy guy you can move. He was a first round pick that had a 20-goal season last year and is not doing well with the Bruins right now. And I don't think it's a lack of talent. I think it's just it's a chemistry issue. I don't think he's going to fit here for much longer. And I would rather get something for him while there is still at least some value before he goes in free agency. I think he's got like a year or two left on that contract.
Do you think the organization and the coaching staff have soured on him a little bit, or because he did have a 20-goal season pretty recently? Do you think they're just waiting for the right deal, or do you think they really like him?
I think they do like him because they've tried. A lot of teams are trying right now. Like Tortorella really set off the trend of healthy scratching. Your good reliable guys to see if that like mentally resets them. So they've tried that, and he's gotten a little bit more production since the beginning of the season, but a lot of it is the line chemistry issues. And Bruce Cassidy is like, his favorite activity is moving around lines and line tinkering. And so they rely on the top line, Marchand, Bergeron, and Pastrnak so much. Pastrnak doesn't look that great. He was injured and then he came back, and I think people just have too high expectations for him, understanding how good he was last year. So now everyone just expects that top line to be good. Bergeron doesn't look that great. He's showing his age. I think he's like 36. And Marchand is like literally carrying the team on his shoulders. So then when the younger guys aren't producing, it's just, showing more. So I think they're expecting a lot out of DeBrusk and, Senchen and all those other guys. But it's a lot of pressure that I think it's not equating to productivity. It's equating to like skittishness on the ice and passing too much and all that.
If the Bruins are done, is there anybody in your system, taxi squad defensively, who can come up and eat minutes?
Yeah, they just brought up Akan, who I know nothing about. He made his debut earlier in the season, and they usually have Clifton switch back and forth from taxi squad. The problem is a lot of those guys are good at one end of the ice, and then they're horrific at the other. So and Pasternak's no help there because he's a sharpshooter, but he absolutely sucks at getting back onto the other end of the ice. And so when he's not actually scoring goals and he's not actually scoring or getting back to play defense, he's a liability on the ice. So when you have all these young guys on defense and then the offense is not doing anything either, especially when Patrice Bergeron is not playing as the offensive defenseman guy that he typically is, it's showing a lot. So, I mean, they're going to keep tinkering with the taxi squad. They've been going, especially the fourth line too. The fourth line and then those lower defensive pairings, they've been changing like every single game. So part of me wishes they just stick with one for a couple games and see if they can get some chemistry going. But like I said, Bruce Cassidy loves to tinker with the line. So they're going to keep moving around until they find one that they like.
Do you think that's because it's, I don't know, so close in the playoff run. Maybe not. You might look at the Flyers and think point wise we're close. I know that we're not doing anything, and the Rangers are climbing a little bit. Do you think it's more so there's no time to find that chemistry, and we just got to do what we can to win and what looks best, what matchups make the most sense?
Yeah, I think my frustration comes from the fact that he's been doing it all season. So at this point, it's like we just got to get through it. We have the most matchups against the Sabres left, which is good if we can win them. But the Rangers have the second most. So, like, it's not – I mean, it's good and bad because the Rangers are not dropping the bad games as much as we are. But, I mean, if we can win against the Sabres who, are selling right now, then that should help us a bit.
Well, I guess my last question is, do you guys have any interest in Justin Braun? Because we are selling, and we're selling hot and high.
I mean, there are a couple guys from your roster that I would take, but, I mean, it doesn't seem like you're parting with any. You're just going to ride it to the bitter end.
Yeah. I would love to have somebody explain that one to me.
Take whoever you want.
Gustafsson, Braun, please. I don't even need anything back at this point. I just showed the team needs some kind of shakeup. But yeah, like you said, looks like we got an hour left and we're going to ride it out. And I don't know why. It's mind boggling, truly.
That's my boy, Ant. Take Voracek. Read
yeah.
my mind. I'm sure you can open some cap space. For
Yeah,
him.
I saw that. I think Giroux's cap hit is $9 million. I saw that when I was writing a trade deadline article the other day, and I was shocked that it was so high. But I mean, again, he's your core, except for the fact that the salary cap isn't going up next year. So that's like going to be a hard hit to take.
Yes.
I mean, Giroux's, he's got, after this year, he's got a year left, Jimmy. It's Voracek's got like 5 years. And it's like, at least Giroux will sometimes, play and tie the game for you, where Voracek is just floating in space. Like he just his demeanor really. Did you hear what he said the other night? Like, oh, it's a cliche. The fans want us to play for 60 minutes. It's really hard to control the game for 60 minutes. It's like, okay, nobody said control. We don't expect you to have the puck for 60 minutes. We just want you to try for 60 minutes. That's it. Just play.
I feel like that's an odd thing to say when you're supposed to try to control the game for 60 minutes.
He is, it's mind-boggling. It really is. And I just want you to back check occasionally. When you don't, you give up the puck.
Back, take a shot.
It's like we're the assholes for expecting this, and it's just. That's why he's so frustrating, and that's why I think that mentality is why this team goes down in games so easily, so quickly, just get into a hole they can't come out of, and I think he's at the center of it. I know he's not the captain. Giroux's more of the silent type.
He's a long-standing player on the team. He still has an impact in the locker room.
Exactly. And I think that I can't say for sure, but he strikes me as a guy where if a young player like a Farabee is like, man, we almost had him. I can't believe we let that game slip away like against Buffalo. Jake's more of a, yeah. Did you get paid this week? Because that's all I give a shit about. Like, and I kind of feel that way. I have nothing to back that up, but he just
you don't want to take Voracek.
It makes me think he cares.
We don't need more complacency on the Bruins, so we're good. We're good there.
That's if you can put his almost off the contract in, which almost only Seattle can. So, fingers crossed.
That's a good thought.
It's my
last question for you before we let you go, Shan. Can the Bruins make noise in the playoffs with the roster as is? Was Mike Riley and Taylor Hall enough to push them over the top if they are matched up with the Islanders in the first round?
It's going to be really interesting to see how Taylor Hall matches up with David Krejci. I mean, I have never been a huge David Krejci fan in general. I think he's overrated just because he's been with the Bruins for a really long time. And I know that Taylor Hall has a ton of question marks. But again, I was looking at the points for Buffalo's roster, and there's only 2 players on their roster that have more than 10 goals this season. So, I mean, I don't think that it's a Hall-specific issue. I mean, obviously he does still have risk, but I think that if he is paired and excited about coming to a new team, there's some sort of momentum there that could be useful both to him and to the Bruins, because the Bruins desperately need someone besides Brad Marchand to get on there and bring some momentum to the ice. I mean, Bergeron has completely underwhelmed me there, and Pastrnak is just not a leader. He's an Ovechkin. He's a shooter. He's not a, even though Ovechkin wears the C, like Pastrnak has that's complacency that I was talking about, but it's just a different player than Voracek. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm excited.
I'm excited to watch the Bruins too. I hope they don't win, but I'm excited. I'm excited to see how all these new pieces kind of fit together and how they do down the stretch here.
Yeah, for sure. And they play the Sabres tomorrow night, and Taylor Hall is literally driving up 95 right now to get to Boston. So
I mean, what better team to kind of put it together against for your first game, right? It's kind of like a practice, unless you're the Flyers. But I digress.
7 Stanley Cup, yeah.
So Shannon, where can the listeners and the viewers, where can they find your work and where can they find your podcasts? Yeah,
so you can find me. That's my Twitter handle, my Instagram handle. It's Swalshy63, and then I am a co-host of the Slapshot Sweethearts podcast. So you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Just search Slapshot Sweethearts, and we are there. We are very active on social media. I've gotten no work done today because I've been on Twitter all day. So that's where I'll be headed after this.
Awesome. So great work as always. Thanks for hanging out with us. We really appreciate your time, and hopefully we get to talk soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys. Have a good rest of your day.
You
all
as
right,
well.
Shannon,
Thanks,
take care.
man.
Bye.
All right, Jack, that was Shannon Walsh. We're going to kind of flip to side 2 here. We're going to do a line change as Jack is getting the first of his COVID shots. So, Jack, you'll be dropping off.
I'll be dropping off. I was very upset that I had to get the shot because I just wanted to talk about all the trades the Flyers are going to make. Now it's looking like a great decision to have the shot today because it looks like Fletcher might be getting his shot done. I don't know because he's not trading anybody. So maybe I'll get back on. Maybe I guess we'll be back later to discuss what didn't happen today. That's it for me.
All right, buddy. Good luck. Have fun, and we'll talk soon.
All right. Take it easy.
Okay, so now we're about to bring on the co-host of the Sheriff and High and Wide Radio, Kyle Warner. Kyle, what's up, dude?
What an underwhelming start to the day, huh?
Let's spice things up a little bit. We're going to bring in our third guest, last but not least, the one and only, our good friend from the Athletic and Smart Scouting, Alex Appleyard. Alex, what's going on, dude?
Hey guys, nice to chat to you again. I mean, not so much, about as much as going on in my perspective right now. Yeah.
That says it all right there, doesn't it, Kyle?
It's bad.
So it looks the same from across the pond, eh? Not much happening over here. So it's last we talked, dude, I think was back just before the season started or the week of, and I don't know. We had expectations. How have you kind of viewed this team from that point to now? Like from your perspective, because you're a little bit more positive, obviously, than I am, at least on Twitter. What happened to this team? What are you seeing from these guys? What happened from January to now?
I think this year has just been myriad of different little things that have added together at different points to cause massive issues. I think they started the season playing awful hockey. The first 15 games when they were winning, they were playing like crap. The transition game was awful, and the only thing that was winning them games was like top forwards just scoring at an unsustainable pace. And the goalie's playing pretty well. And then we got to this March period, and I think some of the cracks that had been papered over just started to fall away. And some of that was, quite frankly, everyone knows how much I like Carter Hart. I've been a massive fan of him since he was 16 years old, but I think he had one of the worst months of net minding I've ever seen for a Flyers goalie, which is pretty crazy considering some of the goalies they've had. And I think Brian Elliott is the same goalie he was last year, but last year, obviously, the Flyers were winning, and this year they're not. So I think that magnifies his issues as well. When you look at his save percentage last year, the way he plays, he's not the most mobile guy, he's getting older. He's a below average backup, who's fine as a backup, but when he was asked to take over those extra starts, you're not going to win many games posting a .885 save percentage. And I think that made a lot of the Flyers' issues look worse. But compounded by that is the fact that you look at the younger players this year and the guys we really expected to develop, and who's played better this year amongst guys under age 25? Farabee. Sure. I mean, you can make an argument, I think, that Konechny over the whole season has been around an okay-ish level. Not as well as last year, but okay. He's probably going to pace for like 70-ish points, even though he needs to score a few more goals. But he had a 15-game window where he looked awful after a good first 5 and a good last 15. And then the rest of them, Provorov looks like a number 4 defenseman this year, when last year he looked like a number 1, number 2. Myers last year looked like he was a legitimate second pair defenseman who was physical, who could play the blue line. And this year he looks like he's had a real crisis of confidence and isn't confident in that game at the blue line to deny entries. And I think that had a kind of trickle-down effect onto Sanheim, who was his partner, because the one thing that Sanheim is really still not great at is his blue line defense. Everything else he does pretty well. And I think having Myers last year clean that area up for him, plastered over some of his problems. And I think you've probably seen that with Sanheim in the last 10 games or so, being moved away from Myers. He's looked a lot better,
Sure
but still not the player he was. And I think that's the biggest issue, in that, for whatever reason, probably a multitude of them combined, is the only young player who's kind of turned up his game and done what we expect him to is Farabee, and everyone else has been worse. I think the veterans overall have been fine. I don't think anyone's really blown the doors off, apart from JVR with his little stretch. They've all played, I think, as expected-ish. Obviously, I think there's been a lot of chatter with Kevin Hayes, but I think, once again, winning plasters over problems. And last year, I think Kevin Hayes is a hot dog style player who'll take on one too many risks. He'll try and go past one too many players, make a crazy pass, and maybe lose his mind in the defensive zone. I don't think it's because of a lack of effort. I think it's because he isn't that high IQ defensive player. And last year, everyone kind of ignored that because, wait, the Flyers are winning. And Kevin Hayes is doing some magical stuff. And this year, he's done some magical stuff, but it's been in 5-3 losses, And I think that's probably a rundown of what the problems are, along with, quite frankly, the special teams being an aberration. You can't win hockey with a 72% penalty kill and a 19% power play. If you want your special teams to be roughly around this 100 mark combined to be an average set of units. And this year, the Flyers have been at like 90, 91, 92 the whole season. You're giving away a lot of goals in that, combined with poor goalie play. What are you going to be apart from mediocre at best?
Yeah, bringing up Kevin Hayes, I keep calling his points this year garbage time points. It always seems like he waits until it's like 3-4-0, and then he's like, I'm going to pull some magic out of a hat.
Yeah, and I think you'd probably see that with a lot of the forwards. I think some of, Voracek, Giroux, James Van Riemsdyk's points look like that, but I think that's because the Flyers are in so fewer close games. You know what I mean? I think players, obviously, this league is such a good league and there's so much parity that it's hard just to go off every game. And guys sometimes have these inspired 10, 15 minutes where they can win a game on their own if they're a good player. And when you're playing in one goal hockey games, 2-goal hockey games, tied hockey games, these moments look like mercurial, flash out of the blue, amazing moments. When you're losing 4-0 already, those players can have the game of their life and everyone forgets about it within 2 minutes and remembers the bad. And I think that's some of it. I do think you're probably talking like 8 to 10 of the Flyers this year. Fine years, good years even. But we've had 26 players on this roster play a significant part of the season. And you're probably talking 15 or 16 of them who've been below average. I think that's really the story of the season. The special teams, net minding, and half your roster playing below the level you expect them to. And those three things combined, how can you overcome that? It doesn't matter if I think some of the veteran guys have played well or fine. They're not going to remember that in 5 years' time. I don't think James Van Riemsdyk is going to go back in time and go, oh, yeah, in 2021, in the 2020-21 season, I paced for point per game. He's going to remember them sucking and not making the playoffs, isn't he? So I think it's probably the same for a lot of them as it is for us. They're not happy, we're not happy. And while the problems you can say, are these 3 or 4 things, if you have 3 or 4 things wrong with any hockey team, it's tough to make the playoffs. And I think that's also been magnified by the division the Flyers are in. If you look around the league and the other divisions, the points the Flyers have right now, even though they've not played very well, they'd be in the playoffs in the other divisions. But the fact of the matter is that you arguably have 4 of the best 10 teams in the league in this division. And the Flyers right now this year, I would say, are probably 15th to 18th best team in the league. And you ain't getting in the playoffs in the best division in hockey, playing subpar to at best mediocre hockey. So yeah, it's probably more negative than you used to from me, but I think that's probably what's happened this year.
But I appreciate you keeping it real, though, because some people we get on, they're just, positive and it's like fake positive. But at least, you're kind of keeping it real. You didn't say anything negative. You just said, hey, it's tough to win when you suck at 4 things, Yeah.
And I mean, I think some of this, I understand some of what's being kind of leaked out by the Flyers, that they consider this season seemingly to a degree a bit of an aberration, and that they don't think it will be repeated to the same degree because of the COVID situation, because of this, because of that. And to a degree, I can get behind some of that. Carter Hart has been a star since he was 15 years old. This is pretty much the first real adversity he's faced in his whole career. He's just blown the doors off every league he's ever been in. Perfect technically. He's a good athlete. He bounces back. And this year, I think you probably have some off-ice things. Obviously speculation. I don't know what's going on in Carter Hart's life. But he's a young goalie in a hockey-mad city who's pretty much locked on his own in an apartment for 6 months. And I think that probably has something to do with it, because when you look at what he's done over his career, he's just been the best goalie in every league he's ever played in. And over his first 2 NHL seasons as basically a teenager into his early 20s, was an above average starter. So I do think Carter Hart is almost certainly going to rebound and probably over the next 10 years be a really good starter. Some of the other issues I think that are more worrying for me is the defense. I think Provorov, for 4 years or so, we've all been talking about, this guy's so close to being a number one. Look at the stuff he can do. And last year, I think, was a moment where everyone was like, look, he's finally blossomed into it, With Matt Niskanen alongside him, he looked like a legitimate number one defenseman, playing 25 minutes a night, getting 40-plus points. Yeah, he had his weak spells, but overall, he looked really good. And this year, I think, while his production's still there, he's been a bit of a mess in his own zone at times. He's had mental lapses. His puck handling has regressed. And I don't think it was the strongest part of his game to begin with. The amount of bobbled pucks he has, turnovers at the blue line. Don't get me wrong, I think he's still, even this year, played at like number 4-ish level. But this is a guy who's playing 25 minutes a night and you need to be your number one. And we know with Provorov, it's not a lack of effort. It's nothing like that. It just seems like a lack of Matt Niskanen next to him has potentially played into that. And I don't think, even though Justin Braun, I think, is actually one of the guys who's played well as you can expect from that guy. He's a number 4 or 5 defenseman and he's played a good season. Justin Braun is not an answer to be paired alongside Provorov. No. And with Sanheim's issues, I would say Sanheim's inconsistency more than anything, because he's had 10-game stretches where he's looked world-beating, and then he's had 10-game stretches where he doesn't look like he can play in the NHL.
That's the most frustrating thing to me, dude. And so before the season, I was a little bit tougher on Sanheim. And, I talk about his size and things like that, how he gets bullied off the puck, or, if you challenge him on a puck, you're going to win. But he can be good. He can be very, very good. And at times he's been the team's best defenseman this season. And that we haven't seen that on a consistent basis yet, I think frustrates me more than anything. Specifically 3-on-3 overtimes. I know it's 3-on-3, but he shows you what he can do with the puck when he pushes play, when he drives the net. He can pass, he can shoot, he can skate. How come we're not seeing this 5-on-5, or what's stopping him from playing on the power play?
Yeah, I would like to see him get some power play 1 reps. I mean, it's difficult right now because I do think that one of the positives, bizarre positives in this season, is that Shane Gostisbehere looks healthy. And he's probably not going to be in Philadelphia much longer, but I guess, he's looking like the Shane Gostisbehere of old, especially the last 15 games. And so it is difficult, I guess, to take him off power play 1, even if it's not setting the world on fire. But when you see, it is bizarre to me that they insist on Provorov being on the power play. He has a great shot, and I think in specific power play situations, he can be a real value. If you're late in a game where the front of the net is packed, you have probably 4 forwards on ice, a guy like Gostisbehere or Sanheim to kind of open up play for the back end, and that big shot from Provorov on the back end to cause chaos. Yeah, 6-on-4 situations, late 5-on-4 power plays, I completely get why Provorov's there, because his shot is a weapon. But when you're, tied 2-2, 3-2 down, etc. on a power play, it seems at times more often than not that he'll slow the power play down a bit too much, potentially lose a puck. And his passing is not good enough to keep up with Giroux and Voracek. You see them whipping passes around. And even now, Farabee and Konechny, who've subbed into that unit at times, they move the puck so quickly. And then it comes to Provorov and he'll definitely, clutch it twice, dawdle a bit. And then the play's kind of broken down. The other team have readjusted. And I think he's always going to score goals on the power play because of his shot and because he is a good skater. And because, he does have some real ability. But I think him being there takes away potential goals from other guys, even if it makes his goals look, better. So I would like to see Sanheim more there, and it would be great to see him get some consistency. Some of it is probably just being a young player thrown into a pretty big role. I mean, effectively, he has been the number 2 this season, whereas last year he was kind of the number 3-4, and it's a bit of a difference going up against, middle sixes as opposed to first lines. But he started the season really strongly and then had just 15 games where he looked lost, and then the last 10 games again has looked great. And I think, the goalies and the young players have been concerning this year, and I don't think I've ever seen in my Flyers watching live over 24 years now, a group of young players all regress simultaneously. Wow. When we had Jeff Carter, Mike Richards, Umberger, Downey, James Van Riemsdyk, and then Giroux. Yeah, you had like James Van Riemsdyk having a down year, or Jeff Carter not quite living up to the hype one year, but the other 3 or 4 would be fine to good. Whereas this year, you've got from top to bottom of the young guys, all of them playing below where you expected, and that is concerning. And hopefully, it is just an aberration, and next year it's back to normal. But these guys are the future of the franchise, and in a cap world, you have to draft well. you have to type your RFAs to decent deals to win because the cap is so restrictive. And it is concerning that if someone like Provorov or Sanheim or potentially maybe even York don't turn into a number one defenseman, you're probably looking at another 7 or 8 years of mediocrity for the Flyers unless they can find one. And that is the biggest concern for me right now going forward.
God damn.
Don't say that. Can we just delete that? Oh shit, this is live.
I said that on the last show, right? And it's like, oh, well, that's just Jim being Jim. But when Alex says it, it's like, oh my God, this could actually happen, right?
I mean, put it this way. The positive is, I think in Provorov, Sanheim, and Myers, you have 3 guys who are all young, who we know are going to be top defensemen. I think Myers this year, yeah, he's a bit off the boil, but look at that physical skill set. He's a freak at the blue line. He's a physical freak, and he's good defensively. I don't think he's ever going to put up more than 25, 30 points, but I think at worst, he's going to be a good number 4. Sanheim and Provorov this year have not been good, but I still think they've been passable second pairing defensemen if we had 3 guys who were playing ahead of them. So yeah, that's the positive. They have 2 guys who are very young on one of the youngest blue lines in the NHL who are playing at an NHL level, but you need one of them to step up. Cam York's obviously just signed his entry-level contract and is a very talented player, but people shouldn't expect him to be some mercurial player. He's just a very steady, efficient player. And I think he'd be best paired with someone potentially like Sanheim, who can be a bit more mercurial going forward. But yeah, and then that's the big question for me. I think they have the goalie in Hart. They're going to trust him and he'll be back to normal.
I think so too.
But that number one defenseman is key in the modern NHL. And if you don't have one, even if you have 4 good number 4 defensemen, number 3s, maybe a number 2, it's very hard to make up for.
Let me ask you guys a question here. So is there anything, I'm sure it's a little bit tougher for Chuck now. We've heard the reasons why: COVID season, flat cap, and expansion draft. Is there any move out there for Chuck to make? Or we played this game the other night, Alex. If you were Chuck Fletcher, if you were GM of the Philadelphia Flyers, what would be the one move that you would make to improve this roster? Any move you want, as long as it's within, the realm of possibility.
I would put all my toys in one basket and go full in on Dougie Hamilton if he makes UFA. Wow. I would do anything to clear up that space for him because I think he is one of the best 10 defensemen in the NHL in terms of overall impact. I think, obviously, he isn't as physical as people would like, and he does have his miscues, but the impact he has, a guy who can get 50-plus points, he can play 25 minutes. He's going to run your number 1 power play, and he's going to score a lot of goals on it, and he can PK and move the puck very efficiently. I'd be perfectly happy to try and pay $9 million for that guy because now I think the Flyers have depth. We see with Lashinsky subbing in now. You saw last year with Orbe Cabell. You've got Allison now tearing it up in the AHL. You've got Wisdom. You've got Forster. You have a guy like David Cachet who came up and gave a decent account of himself. Sushko, who can probably play in the NHL. You have so many depth forwards. It's not going to be an issue. I think the bottom 6 is going to be fine for the foreseeable future. You have 3 or 4 guys. If you include Zamula, York, Sanheim, Myers, Provorov. If all these guys aren't at least number 4 defenseman, number 5 defenseman for the foreseeable future, that would be a surprise. And you have Carter Hart. So, what's really missing? And I think if the Flyers got Dougie Hamilton, it could potentially change the entire dynamic. That being said, to get Dougie Hamilton, obviously, you have to free up a bit of space. If I was Chuck Fletcher going into today, I'd be moving as much as I kind of could because I don't think they have a shot at the playoffs right now.
Got some breaking news here. Lawton signed 5 years, $3 million per.
Oh my God. I mean, that's great. I love Scott. Just, I'm a little bit underwhelmed by that initially.
I think it's a fair value, but
it's a good value deal, but that's just another player on your third line that's making $3 million. So now what? Your third line is 2-3 players making $3 million a year plus.
Yeah.
I
feel like we're all trying
Scott's
to process
a solid player.
So.
I think he's a fine player. Personally, it's difficult, isn't it? I think from what I know, he is a leader in the room, and a lot of people really like him in the organization. And he does play a really nice game in the middle 6. He can play all 3 forward positions. He can penalty kill. But at the same time, I don't think he's a center. And he is really a third-line winger going forward. He's a solid third-line winger, and I think a piece that most teams that want to win a cup need. So I can kind of see the reasoning, in a few years, if Chuck thinks the Flyers are going to be ready in the next year or a year or two, having a Scott Lawton on that third line is valuable. But 5 years is a lot of term at the same time, especially when you have so many young guys in forward positions coming up behind him.
You know, on the bright side of signing Scott for 5 at 3, that's an okay, pretty solid cap hit for a player of, like Alex just mentioned, that can slide up and down your lineup. I feel like we're gonna get to the point where we have more players that can slide up and down the lineup than can actually play a first or second line position. Like, you can't just keep interchanging all these players up and down the lineup and hoping something clicks. That being said, that says goodbye to somebody like Michael Raffle. There's no point in possibly keeping that guy on the team. I do like the idea of being able to get some kids in now. And I also like the idea of everybody regressed this year. So the contracts for guys like Phil Myers and Travis Sanheim don't look so bad anymore.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing with these guys, you know, with their contracts up. You know, guys like Sanheim, Myers, and if they, you know, I mean, there's been rumors about Patrick moving, but right now, Nolan Patrick isn't worth $1 million. And if you can tie him up on a 2-year, let's see what you can do deal. Next year, he might be back to, you know, the Nolan Patrick we saw sparks of as a teenager, where he was a really, you know, good third-line center, who with potential for more. So, yeah, that is one positive of all the guys being underwhelming and underperforming is the Flyers are going to have a bit more cap room than I think we anticipated, because these guys just aren't going to be worth the deals that I think they thought they were going to get, and I think the Flyers thought they were going to have to give them.
All right, so number one topic on my list that I had for you, Alex, was Scott Lawton. He's now crossed off the list. Number 2 on the list. So our buddy Ant Sanfilippo, who we'll talk to later on tonight to recap the day, put out a tweet earlier about how Vegas supposedly has shown interest in Nolan Patrick. Mentioned that Vegas had a couple extra draft picks, and I believe it was this year and next year's draft. Didn't really talk specifics, but just mentioned that Vegas was interested in Patrick. Is it worth it to trade Nolan Patrick for draft picks, you think? Or would you rather keep him around for at least one more year, see if you can get it figured out?
I think the thing that worries me slightly with young players like that, especially someone coming after a year out, is I think as a Flyers fan, I've been burnt too many times by the Justin Williams situation, the Patrick Sharp situation, the Dennis Seidenberg situation, the James Van Riemsdyk situation, you know, even the Braden Setchen situation, where you had players who were kind of underperforming, didn't think they were going to reach the potential. You sent them somewhere else, and, you know, like a few of those guys are cusp Hall of Famers. And I do think that being on a mediocre team can breed mediocrity. If your team is constantly, you know, in that bubble area, you're in a lower role than potentially you would be. And then he's dealing with the migraines as well. I think I would, unless it depends what's coming back, obviously. But for picks, I just don't see the point. The Flyers don't really need picks right now. I don't. If someone's going to say, "Oh, we'll give you a late first-round pick for Nolan Patrick," I think I'd rather just stick and hope that Nolan Patrick can, in a couple of years, maybe become a 50-point center, because I want a 25th overall pick or something. What's that worth in the immediate future? And you have a window that I think, unless someone like Frost really steps up, or Patrick, it's probably going to close in maybe 3 or 4 years, depending on how Giroux does, because Giroux's still the Flyers' second best forward, potentially the second best player, but he's 33. How many more great years out of him are you going to get where he's scoring 70 points pace and playing good two-way hockey? I just don't see the point right now, unless it's a young player coming back who you think also has potential. I don't see the point in trading him when his values are low. Who knows next year, you know, what can happen if he's fully recovered from migraines, if his legs are back under him, we don't have the COVID situation. I think even if he just gets back to the level he was as a teenager, a bit better than that, it would surprise me if Nolan Patrick doesn't turn into a solid 45-point center. And a solid 45-point center every year, as we see in the NHL, if they're young enough, is worth more than a first-round pick. So I think from a risk-reward perspective, it's probably better just to stick. And if in a year he bottoms out completely and they trade him for a second or a third, what have you really lost? I think it's probably better to stick with him for now.
That's true. What are your thoughts there, Kyle?
No, I don't see why you don't stick with him at this point. I mean, unless you can get a hell of a return, maybe addressing that top 4 defensemen right off the bat, and somebody with a little bit of term that can go into next year and the year after. I don't see why Nolan Patrick would be sacrificed so early, because as Alex pointed out, I mean, this dude was touted as a potential number one center. And while I don't think he's ever going to reach that potential by a long shot, giving up on him before his 24th birthday is a little bit early in my eyes, especially given the unfortunate circumstances with the headaches and missing a full year. I mean, this year, did we really expect Patrick to put up 40, 50 points? No, nobody did. But some people were saying he wasn't even going to play, and he did play, and he is playing. And while it's not to the potential of what we all expect from Patrick, he is playing. So he's, I hate to say it, but I'm going to drop this one. He's trending in the right direction, Jim.
It's hard to disagree. Before the season, that's what we said. As long as he plays and stays healthy, that's a win. Unfortunately, that's literally all we're getting. I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, not doing much on the stat sheet, not showing up much on the ice. You know, maybe he's still working out the mental kinks, whatever it is. I think I agree with you guys. I mean, the worst thing that could happen is his value goes to complete hell. And you're kind of in the same boat you are now anyway. What are you going to really get for Nolan Patrick if you trade him at this deadline? Maybe, you know, seconds, third, fourth round picks, who knows? But like Alex said, I'm so over picks, I'm over prospects, I'm over picks. Like, let's start to build. Giroux's not getting any younger. Voracek's not getting any younger. Couturier, even Hayes is up there. Like, these guys, as we wait for the kids to grow, and I've said this, I think, on other shows before, that they're kind of missing the guys that are handing off the baton, like the Giroux's, the Voracek's, handing off the baton, the Provorov, Sanheims. As we wait for the younger kids to mature and get their game to par, the guys at the top are kind of getting older and older, and it's like, are they going to be around now for when these kids are actually ready to go? I think that's a little bit, I get anxiety thinking about that a little bit. It's like, it just doesn't match up for me. You know, it's, you know, by the time these guys are ready, can these guys still play? You know where I'm coming from there?
I think the hard bit is that effectively, when you look back and analyze it, the Flyers have pinned almost everything from the process perspective and Hextall's drafting, which yeah, has been good. You know, they produced a lot of NHLers from above expectations in terms of where they've drafted. But I think a lot of it was pinned on having this window that would have, in theory, should have started, you know, 2 years ago or so, where Giroux and Voracek are still 70-ish point players who are first-line level, which I think they still are. You have Couturier in his real prime. And I think the expectation was that these kids would then be the second, third best players. And that Voracek and Giroux would take, you know, the Marian Hossa, Marian Gaborik role that Chicago and LA had, where they were the third, fourth best forwards who would play less minutes, but key situations and show up big in a second line role. And that hasn't kind of came to fruition. Obviously, Couturier is fantastic and the Flyers' best player pretty much. But and it is starting to get to the point where Giroux and Voracek, I think, have aged extremely well. When you look at aging curves around the NHL, the fact that they're still scoring at first line level at 5v5 is unexpected and in the top kind of 20% of once elite players. But how much longer can they do that? I think, you know, on average, the cliff for NHL forwards is 34-ish years old, where they stop being first line-ish level if they once were. And, you know, Giroux's pretty much at that. Voracek's not so far off. And yeah, I think they're good enough players and smart enough players that they'll still be good middle sixers until they're probably 37 years old. But if no one replaces those 70, 80-point seasons that they have, no one replaces that star ability, what are we going to have? And I think especially Kevin Hayes is a really good 2C. Sean Couturier is a solid 1C. But you have to kind of put things around that. You know, Konechny, obviously, and Farabee, I think both have the potential to be really good first-line wingers, and we've seen that for stretches. But it's how soon is that going to be, and is it going to line up with the D? And I think that's the concern, that all the chips were put in the basket for this period from like the 2019 to 2023, 24. And we're right in slap bang in the middle of that. And last year is still the best season we've had since 2011, 12. So yeah.
Here's a question for you. So Giroux's prime, I'm gonna say it. It was basically wasted under Ron Hextall, you know, with this, you know, the halfway rebuild type thing. Hextall as the coach and whatever, not really providing a competent roster for not only the coach, but Giroux. Sean Couturier's extension or supposed extension is coming up after next season. Do you think they should, as the team stands right now, no significant move? Obviously, they just signed Scotty Lawton, which to me would signify they still believe that they're going for the cup. They're not going to, tear anything down. Should they re-sign Sean Couturier, or should they look to trade him?
I mean, obviously, it all depends on what you can get in return for Couturier. I mean, personally, I think it's very difficult to trade a guy who I think he's underrated in some regards by the NHL watching community in general, just because he isn't even a good power play player. He's just an average power play player. But if you look at what he does at 5v5, I think there's a hard argument. It's a hard argument to say there are 10 better centers in the league in terms of what he does for the Flyers at 5v5 and his two-way play. And, this year he's pacing point per game. He's had 3 70-point seasons in a row now while being a Selke winner. And it's going to be very hard to replace that, because you're really talking, who else can do what he does at an age younger than him?
I agree.
Maybe Barkov. And even so, I don't think Barkov is as good as Couturier quite yet. If you think Sean Couturier is going to be the same level-ish as, guys like Taves and Kopitar at age 35, I think you have to re-sign him and try and sign him until that 34, that magical kind of 34-ish age. What's he worth? I mean, I think that is the good thing with Couturier, because his raw production is brought down slightly by the power play. Even though he's a fantastic two-way player, I hope that he doesn't get up in that 10 million range, even though he's probably worth that in terms of impact on ice. Yeah. But you're definitely going to see him going up here. I mean, he's worth 9 million. If his agent doesn't get him 8.5+ million in this cap, I mean, because we always forget, I think at times, that Giroux and Voracek's deals were signed with a far lower cap, with, a 60-something million cap, and now it's 80 million. When you look at the percentage of cap, if Sean Couturier signs for 9 million, I think that's a very good deal for the Flyers in terms of what he brings. And it's just, if you have a guy who's young, who you think can be a 1C, and get something else on top of that for Couturier, maybe you do it. But there are so few of those players available, and unless you have, a Tyler Seguin situation like we had a few years ago, where he was moved, how often do those guys get moved? If you draft a potential first-line center, you don't move them. Because they're rare as gold dust. If you look at, first-line centers who are drafted after the 20th overall pick in the last 20 years, you're pretty much looking at a list of Braden Point, Claude Giroux, Patrice Bergeron, and David Krejci. That's pretty much it. It's so difficult to get those guys unless you draft high. And if the Flyers are planning on competing, I don't think they're going to be drafting very high in the next couple of years to get one of those guys. So I think you kind of, unless an amazing deal comes up, I think you have to re-sign Couturier and make him the focal point of the team.
I think I would agree there. If the plan is to play for a Stanley Cup, you don't do it without Sean Couturier. You absolutely need to re-sign him. And I hope he's everything like what you said there. If you can play at this rate, or at least the rate of Andre Kopitar and Jonathan Taves till he's 33, 34, 35, absolutely you need Sean Couturier. So, Alex, before we let you drop off here, I want to kind of get your opinion on some of the trades that have already taken place. So we had former Flyer Jeff Carter traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins. What are your thoughts on that trade? Old sneaky Ron bringing some guys to Pittsburgh with him.
I think Heck still got pretty good value on that. Some conditional picks for a guy who's still a 40-ish point player and can play in your middle six and can always show up with a ridiculous goal because he still has that booming shot when he can get it off. Yeah, I think that makes the Penguins a better team. It makes them a lot more dangerous, because I do think at times they are a bit too reliant still on Crosby and Malkin. And if Carter's playing on a third line with some of their younger guys and on their power play, that makes them a threat for another year, because I think that's what the Penguins are obviously doing right now. They're just trying to milk out the last bit of Malkin and Crosby they can before they know they're going to have to go into full-on rebuild mode. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Penguins. And obviously I don't want the Penguins to win, but it makes them them slightly better. So I think it's a good deal for them.
Absolutely. What team so far are you most impressed with at the trade deadline? There's been a couple teams that have made multiple moves. Right now I'm looking at the Blackhawks. The Lightning got a little creative. Toronto obviously has done a lot of things, a lot of creative things. Blue Jackets have made some great value trades. Who's impressed you the most so far?
I mean, it's in terms of impress, it's always difficult in terms of value versus intention. I would say that Tampa Bay impressed me in terms of the cojones, just to go out and go, look, we're going to win another cup. we're overpaying. They overpaid. They paid way too much for what they got. But it impresses me that they're going all in on this and going, the cup is the most important thing. Paul Holmgren had enormous flaws, obviously, as a general manager, but I think that's something that Flyers fans appreciated at the time. That he would try and win. Try and win. And I think Tampa have the team right now where I think they can become a dynasty. I think they can win 3-4 cups. And if this helps them a bit, so that impresses me from the intention perspective. But I do think that in terms of the team that might have got a lot better, the Boston Bruins also in the division, picking up Taylor Hall with retained salary. And even though they lost Bjork, who's a talented young player, Taylor Hall's only a couple of seasons removed for an MVP season. And while people have doubted his goal production, he's never been a massive goal scorer. When he was putting up those silly seasons, it was mainly assists anyway. And when you add that to a slightly depleted Boston team who are way too reliant on Bergeron at times and Pastrnak, that just adds another. Who do you match up against now with Boston?
That's what I was thinking. Go ahead.
You have so many players who carry play. And Taylor Hall, as much as he hasn't been that great, let's be honest, every single player who plays for Buffalo Sabres over the last 15 years has looked like crap on Buffalo versus where they've gone next. So I think you probably see similar with Hall. Boston got a lot better with that. I think the Penguins obviously improved. With the Leafs, I don't know.
Not impressed with the Leafs.
Felino's a solid player. Nelson's a solid player, but
you don't like him.
Riley Nash, they're just okay,
Not doing anything.
I think they got better. They got better, but the problem with the Toronto Maple Leafs is this still the defense and the fact that they don't know which Anderson's going to show up from night to night. If goals a game, I think they can be a real contender, and they have got a lot better this year, and they're still very impressive, and I think they're a contender. But I think Taylor Hall is the biggest piece that's been moved, and I think potentially the biggest game breaker. And obviously, you don't know how guys are going to perform on new teams, but I always like the upside of players, always. And I think if Taylor Hall shows up and feels it in Boston and has some good chemistry, you're going to get a guy who potentially is like a 90, 85-point player for the rest of your run, who can cause some real matchup problems. And I think provide something they don't really have. Marchand and Bergeron played like that grindy game, high IQ, get to those danger areas. Pastrnak, unbelievable shot and can side through teams on his own. Hall has that speed. He has the ability to transition with the puck, and he can also just pick out passes from nowhere. Their power play is also already terrifying. Taylor Hall on that power play, passing pucks across to David Pastrnak. Yeah, I think the Bruins would probably be up there alongside Tampa now in terms of who I think are the most likely to win the cup.
Wow.
So yeah, if the cup is the aim, the objection of everything, which it obviously is, I'm going to say that Boston got good value for Hall. And Tampa, while I don't think they got good value in any way, shape, or form, they improved one of the holes in their team and made themselves a better team. So I would say they're the two that have impressed me in terms of intention the most. Toronto and Penguins have made their teams better too. I don't think they can be discounted, but that would be my pick.
Kyle, who stood out to you so far?
Obviously Boston adding a guy like Hall it's a killer move to go knowing you're going to be in the playoffs or at least being on the edge right now. It's a move that your team is going, or at least your GM's going, we're going to make the playoffs and we're going to give it everything we got to make the playoffs and hopefully make a little bit of a run here. I don't know if it's going to pan out because Taylor Hall to me is just kind of one of those guys that okay, maybe it works, but when it doesn't work, holy shit, it doesn't work. like in Buffalo, which a lot of people don't work in Buffalo, but I'm a little sketchy there with the Taylor Hall acquisition for them. Honestly, I really like Toronto's acquisition of Foligno. He's a guy who adds another Simmons-esque type forward going into a playoffs that is going to be extremely physical, especially in the first two rounds being against division opponents. Big body. I think that's going to pay off as much as some of the other moves that went down. And obviously, Tampa overpaid like oh my God, I can't even believe they gave up as much as they did to get Savard. But it was a hole that they had on defense, and they filled it, which is something the Flyers haven't done in years. So kudos to them for giving it their all to at least put everything in one basket. We're going to go for another cup.
I think as well with Toronto, the thing that sours me slightly on it is Toronto can score already. You know, like they can outscore every single team in the league. I think in terms of the most dangerous offenses in the NHL, Toronto are up there with kind of, you know, the Avalanche and the Golden Knights. I would say they're the top three before the trade deadline. If I was in charge of the Leafs, I would have maybe tried to shore up the back end slightly. I think they've been okay this year. They've not been as bad as in previous years defensively, but they're just an average defensive team. And if I was going into the playoffs, I would have probably liked another defenseman as opposed to going out there and, you know, getting a glut of guys who are going to play in your middle six or potentially fourth line.
But isn't Foligno more of a defensive-minded forward than he is an offensive-minded forward? And it does shore up a bit of their penalty kill, having another big center that can fill in the penalty kill, so you don't have to use guys on your top two lines.
Yeah, I just think they didn't really have many holes at kind of forward to begin with. So it feels a bit, you know, like you just add in more 35, 40-point players who they already kind of have. That isn't really an issue for them. So yeah, I think don't get me wrong, I think they have improved their team. Foligno is a good player, and he's going to make their middle or bottom six, depending on where they play him. If they play him on a second line in a third wheel role, if they put him in the bottom six, it'll make their team better. But I think the impact of someone like Hall could be far greater, obviously, than the combined assets of, you know, guys like Nash and Foligno and Nosen. Yeah, if it was the Flyers, for example, you'd much rather they get a Taylor Hall on a coin toss that is Taylor Hall who can get 80 points than add in more, you know, guys who you already kind of have. And I know they added a different aspect, but they do have some big, tough forwards already. I don't think that's an issue for them this season going into it. So it felt like they've improved, but yeah, I think there's still a hole there potentially for them on D.
Who has underwhelmed you? Who has surprisingly not made any moves that
the Flyers
that you thought was going to make at least one, you know, sort of splash to propel themselves into the playoffs?
I think what's been it's a difficult trade deadline. I think that's the biggest takeaway. When you start looking at the cap, I mean, I talked about it when Gostisbehere was traded, you know? I mean, when he was waived even. There were only really about 3 teams who could have claimed him in terms of even if you think he's still a top 4 defenseman, pretty much 25 teams are out of the running just because of cap, because they'd either be over the cap at that time or they'd be over the cap at the deadline. And this is the issue you have now. You know, look at what Tampa had to do. They had to overpay. They had to get very creative. They had to call in a favor from Steve Yzerman, who's still seemingly doing the Tampa Bay Lightning's GM's job for him in that situation. So I understand why some teams have not really done that much. I know you'd have like Colorado just, you know, got Carl Soderberg back for like the 16th time or something like this, but
yeah,
well, they're the only
play for them too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of weird. They went back and got some familiar faces. Yeah, pretty. I mean, I think, you know, the load was shot last night in the Taylor Hall deal, the Jeff Carter deal. Foligno was traded over the weekend. The Savard deal was done over the weekend. That was a fun one. But yeah, today's been kind of, you know, at least in Flyer land, it's been a typical trade deadline day. You know, this is what we've come to expect the last couple of years. Maybe that's a good thing. You know, sometimes the best moves are the ones that you don't make. We'll see if that's the case here with Chuck Fletcher and the Flyers. We know that the surgery that needs to happen, or if there's a move that needs to be made, it's going to be during the offseason. We're not likely going to see, you know, a big time move to bring in, you know, Ryan Ellis or Matthias Ekholm or somebody to play on the top pairing with Provorov or to match up with Sanheim. More than likely, if that move is going to happen, it's going to come in the offseason. You don't really see too many trade deadline moves that are going to alter the structure of your team. So, you know, we always go into the trade deadline with high hopes and expectations because it's fun. It's fun to get excited. But in
It's not.
reality,
This is why I don't have hair on my head.
I think for me, the one to watch in the next few hours is potentially Carolina.
Few hours? You mean 10 minutes?
Well, obviously trades come in a lot after the deadline. Like you'll get stuff announced 2 hours later. But Carolina are one of the only teams with actual cap space who are potential contenders. So I'll be interested to see what they do. I mean, they have a pretty solid team and not many holes. But I think it's Carolina's time in the next couple of years to really go for it. They have a really great roster, and I think their net minding held them back for a few years.
That'll looks pretty good.
Yeah, they might make a big move, especially since, who I spoke about before, Dougie Hamilton might not be sticking around in the summer. So I think this might be their big year to get another cup. So if I was Carolina, I would probably be trying to use some of that cap space because there's no good sitting around with have 9.5 million cap space or something like this right now. Yeah. So yeah, they'll be interesting to see if they make a move. And Penguins still have a bit of cap space, but most of the other big contenders, they just tied up to their ears. Unless they move something out, I'll get extremely creative. I just can't see any enormous moves. With the Flyers, it wouldn't shock me if they moved out, a raffle for, say, a 4th or 5th round pick.
They got rid of Gustafsson. Yay!
Nice. What was the return?
Oh, hopefully a bag of pucks, but more than 10 pucks. Less than 10, and I'm not happy with it.
So in the comments, we have our buddy Ty hanging out with us. He reports Gus to Montreal per Elliot Friedman, a late round pick in return. I guess the return's not yet been specified, so got something for him.
Yeah, if I was going to guess in terms of league value, what was good value? I mean, good value when you start talking about late round picks is completely irrelevant almost. But if he got a 5th or higher, that would be, I think, good value. If they got a conditional 6th or 7th, it's whatever. Just it's a bit of cap space.
It gets rid of $3 million.
Another move coming.
Yeah, they're getting rid of cap. They're gonna make the big. He was waiting for that contract to get signed by Lawton. There goes Voracek now.
Oh my God! Could you imagine?
I would be extremely ecstatic if Voracek gets traded.
Right when we sign off, it's gonna come.
I do think it wouldn't shock me if, COVID obviously plays into things, but I do think there are some tradable pieces. Like I've said, Raffle, I don't think it would be much, but I think he still has value around the league as a guy who can play all 3 positions. He can play up the lineup. I don't think he's had a very good year versus, say, last year, but he can PK still. Wouldn't shock me if someone threw out a conditional 4th or something for him as a, bottom 6 role player. And then you have a guy like Elliott. Potentially could be moved, no term. But yeah, then after that, it's very difficult to move, say, a guy like Braun or Hegg, simply because of their term. Like we saw with Gustafsson. So the only guys I think the Flyers are probably able to move are the guys who are on expiring contracts. Usually, I think you'd probably be able to move, say, James Van Riemsdyk, especially with the year he's having in an ideal. I think in a normal season, James Van Riemsdyk right now would be hot property, and you could get the highest value you're probably ever going to get for him. But this year, who can accommodate that cap? No one.
Yep.
It makes it a lot more difficult.
That's the hardest part with Voracek is if you're getting rid of him, you're either getting rid of him to Seattle or you're taking a significant cap hit back in order to get rid of him. So, but I feel like the Voracek situation is will be more of a change of scenery for both players. It's both players were meh. They're not the greatest. They're not the worst, but maybe a change of scenery for both players helps. But you're going to be taking significant cap back for Voracek if you don't get him to Seattle.
I think that is one of the most frustrating things as a Flyers fan in the last few years, though. The whole change of scenery thing. It seems like everyone who has a change of scenery from the Flyers better, and then the guys who come to the Flyers generally decline. So hopefully we don't have a repeat of that with anyone who we're going to be shipping out.
Maybe it's
I do think there's some positives, but yeah, really the focus should shift to next year because they are not going to go 11-2-2 or whatever they need to get in the playoffs right now. So yeah, hopefully they move out a couple of other pieces. Everyone knows I've loved Raffle for a long time, but with the young kids going, he is surplus to requirements, and if you can get a pick for him, go for it.
What do you mean they're not going to go 11-2-2? They're going to go 15-0. You watch.
Starting the train. Well, Alex, we've had you on for a little bit longer than I mentioned before we started the show, but it's always fun hanging out with you. We've had you on for about I don't know how long's it been now, an hour almost. So Yeah, man. We'll let you drop off. We've been going on for almost 2 hours. We had a Flyers move, 2, I guess, if you count the Lawton one. So that's exciting. Where can people find your work, dude?
Yeah, mainly on Twitter at AV Appleyard. I'm also putting out getting ready for the run up for the 2021 NHL draft. Probably too soon for Flyers fans to shift their attention to that. I think we're still in mourning for this season, but I guess in a few weeks' time, everyone will start looking into who's available in this draft, and there are some really good players. Especially potentially, I think it's a good for where the Flyers are probably going to pick the 15th. And there's quite a lot of.
Are we freezing up here?
Yeah, I think I froze for a second there.
Oh, there he is. You want to repeat that? I don't know if that got in. Go ahead.
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at AV Appleyard. And also with the draft coming up, I'll be putting a lot of focus in the next few months on writing articles for Smart Scouting, getting some more draft reports out, mainly on Swedes and Finns, with maybe the odd North American, Czech, Russian thrown in there. I think it could be quite a fun draft in terms of there's no real clear-cut number one, but there are a lot of guys who have this potential top 10 talent level. So I think if the Flyers are picking, in that 12 to 15 range, there's the potential to get another kind of Joel Farabee style guy who is really a top 6 or 7 talent, but kind of got lost in the shuffle. So yeah, something to look forward to at least.
Yeah, man, we'll have to have you on for a couple shows as the season comes down to the end, and get you back on over the off season. Always a good time hanging out with you, Alex. Thanks once again for joining us, and make sure you guys follow Alex if you're not already. I'm sure if you're listening to us or following us, you're already following Alex. Always great stuff. Always great opinions on Twitter. Always provides a different perspective, positive perspective, which I appreciate. A lot of people appreciate. So once again, thanks, Alex, and we'll have to get together soon, man.
Yeah, for sure. See you guys. Pleasure coming on.
Cheers, mate.
You had to throw that in.
Yeah, I did. I love Alex. So yeah, let's talk about the 2 moves made while we had Alex on. We're about 7 minutes from 3:00. What are your thoughts on the Scotty Lawton deal? I know we talked a little bit about it, but we said 5 years it was for $3 million?
5 years at $3 million per.
Does that kind of remind you of the Tanev deal with Pittsburgh a little bit?
A little bit. Yeah, I mean, now that you mention it, it wasn't the first thing to pop up in my head, but yeah, now that you mention it, it can't be too far off of that deal.
Yeah, I mean, Scotty Lawton's like a Swiss Army knife. He's an essential part of this roster. I don't know if that's good or bad. I guess it's cool. I mean, I think my favorite player on the team is going to be around for 5 more years. That's fine. Does Scott Lawton, does he get me excited to watch the Flyers? No. You know what I mean? So it's a fine deal. It's okay. It's not going to piss me off. It's not going to, make my day. We're seeing now in the comments, the Flyers received a 2022 7th-round pick for Eric Gustafsson, 50% retained salary. So they basically
for that big old acquisition in the offseason. Jesus.
Yeah, basically admitting your mistake. Yeah, what a shame that was.
And
man.
eating half of it.
Part of me wonders if that was the plan all along. Maybe he'll pan out a little bit and you can ship him off at the deadline.
For a 7th-round pick?
Yeah, it's terrible. That's bad. Hey, Jack's back. 7th-round pick for Gus. Fletcher's greatest GM ever. Yeah, so it doesn't look like we're going to see too much else. Let's update the trade list tracker one more time before we sign off. Almost a 2-hour show. TSN trade tracker. Oh, you overwhelmed, underwhelmed? What do you think about today?
Completely underwhelmed.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't appear that there was any attempt made at pretty much anything. I mean, apparently he was in negotiations all day with Scott Lawton's camp.
Yeah.
And that was it. Wasn't even answering phone calls for Jack. So
there is a breaking trade. I'm going to put this in the comments. Sam Bennett was just traded to the Florida Panthers.
Good for Florida. They're a good team, dude. Sam
Yeah.
Bennett's going to fit in well down there. What was given up?
The Florida Panthers traded Emil Heineman and a 2022 second round pick. So we're seeing 2022 picks fly around, not so much 2021s.
That's because nobody knows what this draft is going to be like. Nobody played.
I know. Yeah. So if you guys are listening or watching, make sure you pay attention to what Alex says so you guys can kind of, catch up on the draft stuff here. It looks like teams are not really excited for 2021. So that's very interesting. And then, of course, the Flyers trade shows up here. Eric Gustafson is gone for a 2022 seventh round pick. 3 minutes away from deadline. Yeah, it is pretty underwhelming. But maybe it's, we pump ourselves up every year. I made a comment last night. I haven't been truly amped up for a Flyers signing since they offer sheeted Shea Weber. Right?
That was fun, wasn't it? That was fun.
Yeah, it was because it wasn't it late at night or something, and you get that ESPN update on your phone. You're like, what? Shea Weber? It was like crazy because that stuff didn't happen. Like you don't sign RFAs to offer sheets or whatever it was. And then don't get me wrong, like the Hayes stuff was fun to talk about, and the JVR thing. The only reason JVR was exciting was because of how deprived we were of signing free agents or trading for good players, right? When I look back, I'm like, I was that excited for James Van Riemsdyk? That's how bad things got. So,
I mean, but this year, not bad watching JVR play hockey.
Yeah, that's for sure. I wonder if I can see Van Riemsdyk being the guy that goes instead of Voracek, unfortunately. I think he's probably easier to take on rather than Jay because he's got less years, obviously.
Well, that's unfortunate because that means we have to keep the other one.
I know, for sure. So I was going to go right up until 3 here. I really got to pee, dude. Unless you want to carry the weight here for the next.
Nah, the day's pretty much over, man.
All right.
The Flyers aren't doing anything else.
We're going to sign off, guys. That's going to do it for our trade deadline show, a 2-hour show. Thank you to all of our guests that came on. Kyle Hall of the Broadway Hat podcast, Shannon Walsh of the Slapshot Sweethearts, and last but not least, Alex Appleyard of The Athletic and Smart Scouting. Awesome show. Something different we tried to do for you guys. Hopefully, if you tuned in, you enjoyed it. Kyle and Jack, as always, a huge part of the show. We'll be back, believe it or not, later tonight with Ann Sanfilippo to kind of recap the day. Maybe there's something that we missed here that we can talk about later, kind of assess the Flyers to now, where they're going to go going forward, and kind of get Ant's view of what's wrong with this team. So until tonight, is it nice out? I don't know. It looks a little gloomy. If it's nice out,
gloomy. It's just like Chuck Fletcher's day, just gloomy.
Get outside, go do things that make you happy. Don't watch the Flyers. Take your vitamins, and we'll see you guys tonight.